Welcome back to Kings of the North, Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Landis, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you? Excited to talk Buckeyes and Ducks here.
Yeah, we're going to buck and duck it up. It's a KOTN Showdown, Ohio State versus Oregon. We're kind of saving this one. We know it's a banger. It's the defending national champs against the only team that was undefeated through the regular season last year. Much of last offseason, Bill, I was saying, many people were saying, I think these teams might wind up playing 3 times in the 2024 season. They maybe would have if Ohio State didn't lose to Michigan in the last game of the regular season, and Ohio State didn't make the Big Ten title game. They certainly did play twice. They split those games. We know how they went. So we have 2 things that we're going to do on this show, Bill. One is this KOTN Showdown that we're going to jump into right away with Ohio State and Oregon. And the second is we're going to jump off of that conversation to talk about new rivalries that we think could develop. We would like to see develop. We think could develop. Perhaps the sport could help develop over the next 5 or 10 years. And guess what? Ohio State, Oregon's going to be on this list. And we're going to try to define, Landis, like what makes a rivalry. And I think you could do a whole show. We're actually going to talk rivalries next week in a different way also. Like, are we past the point of making rivalries? If you didn't become rivals in the 30s or the 1890s or the 1960s, is it too late? It's over. Because, like, what is a rivalry? How much is history and tradition a necessary part of being a rival? So anyway, I think it's an interesting conversation. We're going to have our top 10 new rivalries for college football.
Yeah, I'm excited for that because I think there is room for new rivalries in college football. It's listen, if you've been playing for 100 years, it's great. We love it. But I think there's room. I think there's room for new ones to develop, certainly, as college football continues to change.
Yeah. And also, we're going to start with what I'm going to call the beginning of our preseason cram it list. And I think we will definitely do this as a show in the preseason. Top 10 people that we think can cram it going into 2025. And we have an early entry coming in hot from Nashville on a bus, apparently, is Diego Pavia. And 2 things happened here. Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, went on Bussin' with the Boys, which is not a product that I typically consume, but they seem to do a lovely job talking about college football. They sit on a bus and they had him on and he was talking. And he took some shots at the Big Ten. And then, to be fair, On 3, which just has a way of doing stuff, I think was the word eviscerate, Bill, that they put on social media?
Yes, it was a strong verb choice, but I did appreciate it.
So this is one of those things where if you just read eviscerate, if you just see the word eviscerate, it feels like maybe a plan, right? And then I watched the whole clip, and it's just a kid saying ding dong things, right? And then, to their credit, is it Taylor Lewan? Is that one of the guys who's a boy on the bus?
Yeah, he's one of the boys on the bus. Yeah,
because he went to Michigan, right? He's a great Michigan player. So Diego Pavia basically was talking about all like these teams that were coming after him in the portal, and here's a quote. He was talking about like who came after him. He said he got a huge offer from an SEC school, and someone said, did any Big Ten teams come after you? He said, you want to play with the best. You don't want to play with the Big Ten. You ignore those calls. You know that. And then he started going through the Big Ten. You have like Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State. You really only have 4 games a year. The SEC is like week after week. The Big Ten, anyway, is not the same. And then Taylor Lewan was like, what about Illinois? What about Washington? What about Iowa? Like, he did a good job. He pushed back immediately. Yeah. And I think there's another boy on the bus who maybe also has Big Ten roots. And they basically
Will Compton is a Nebraska guy. Yeah.
He's a Nebraska guy. Okay. Yeah. They said, like, Will Compton was like, we don't want to get in a fight with you right now because you're our guest on our bus. But what you just said is ridiculous. And so it wasn't like Diego Pavia just like walked into town, dropped the mic. It's like he got up to do karaoke and was like, the Big Ten is bad. And the crowd booed him. And then he was like, oh, okay, I don't really know what I'm talking about. And then On 3 came in and was like, oh, let's get out the thesaurus. How about eviscerates? And that's how we saw it, because I didn't see it naturally. I saw the verb, and it was like, okay, we got to get our swords out. And then it was like, sometimes players just say ding dong stuff.
Yeah, and he said a few ding dong things. He said that Vanderbilt was going to own the state of Tennessee, which actually I actually kind of like that. I'm okay with that. And then he said someone offered him $4.5 million, which is definitely not true, but I guess you can say whatever you want on a podcast now, so that's good.
And he also like said they're going to beat Bama again. Like he was like, he's just out here. He's just saying stuff. And then our guy, Connor O'Gara, was like, you know, it's great for a Vandy quarterback to be saying stuff like this, which again, like I get that idea, but I was just trying to imagine if after 2018, when Purdue beat Ohio State, if David Blau was like, Nick Saban can cram it. Watch out for Purdue. We own Indiana. We own the Big Ten, and the SEC sucks. And if everybody would be like, oh my God, that's exactly what Purdue needs. David Blau, stand up for the Boilermakers. Huge win, get on a bus, pop off, eviscerate. Yeah. And like, that's like, woo, that's what Vandy needs. It's like, okay, I mean, maybe it is. So we're not going to crush the kid, but it was a confluence of events that made us, I mean, you sent it to our group chat. You were on alert.
I sent it to the group chat and said KOTN has a new enemy. Yeah.
Which is what this is what the cram it list is going to be. So our loyal, educated, dedicated Northern audience, ask KOTN@gmail.com. When you see something, Gmail something. When you see something, Gmail something. Let us know. We will start taking candidates for the preseason cram it list yesterday. We're on alert. Right? Because Landis, we have to know. So initially it's going to be like, all right, Diego Pavia, you've made enemies. And now, I mean, when you watch it, I'm not going to root against Diego Pavia this year, but it's like,
I'm going to root for him because I still want to see Vanderbilt beat SEC teams.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, right. It's like, honestly, if we had to take an SEC team in the North, it's like they're kind of from a big city. It's a good academic institution. Like, I don't know. It's like we probably take
like 5 hours from where we are in Columbus. It's not that far from here.
So anyway, so it was not, if all you saw, loyal, dedicated, educated Northern college football fan, if all you saw was a social media graphic, it wasn't quite that bad. It wasn't like it's not part of his agenda. He just said something on a bus.
Sure, but it was enough to make fun of. Like, get your Georgia State jokes off. I got mine off. I got my Georgia State joke off. So everyone, make sure you take that opportunity.
Oh yeah, Landis is not going to let you get away with it. I appreciated the fact that I got a couple things on Twitter where people were tagging me, and I was like, Landis is madder than I am. Just so you guys know, he's ready. So okay, you want to do a KOTN showdown? Do this thing. The people want it. I think you guys understand it by now. We're going to continue moving through these until we get through all 28 of our Northern teams. But obviously, Ohio State, Oregon is as good as it gets. I think they were the two obvious ones to compare here, Landis. We did Michigan, Utah. We did Penn State, Notre Dame. I don't know that to try to do. I mean, Ohio State, Notre Dame played for the national title. You certainly could do Ohio State, Notre Dame. They've just played on the field, 3 times in the last 4 years or whatever it was. You certainly could do Ohio State, Penn State, although Ohio State has dominated that rivalry. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan is always up for grabs, and Michigan has won the last 4 there. But I think big picture, where the programs are, this is the showdown that makes the most sense. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I guess you could say, like, if you wanted to do. Well, Oregon's a national title contender. Like, whether or not you and I agree, like, wholeheartedly with that is another thing. But, like, if you look at the odds and the way people think about Oregon is a bona fide national title contender, just like Ohio State is. They recruit similarly. Like, I think Oregon, like, is certainly trying to chase Ohio State's spot on the Big Ten pedestal. So, yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Buckeye the Great is noting that Greg Sankey is definitely on our cram it list. Oh, hold on a second. Greg.
So is Bill Belichick. He's a shoo-in.
Oh my God, this list is going to be so good. We'll send out we'll send out for certificates.
And who's your guy from ESPN that says stupid stuff about the SEC?
Peter Burns.
Yeah, he's on there too.
Yeah. So somebody
filling up quick. Spots are filling up quick, getting those nominations.
Somebody from the SEC network who's like apparently is like an occasional Feinbaum fill-in host added me on LinkedIn the other day. So they might be coming for me, Landis.
All right.
Let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Odds to win the national championship. Ohio State and Oregon are way at the top of that. The latest ones I saw on FanDuel, Ohio State was second at plus 600. Oregon was fifth at plus 900. Odds to win the Big Ten, Ohio State was first at plus 190, then Penn State, then Oregon third at plus 300. Odds to go undefeated on FanDuel. Number one was Notre Dame at plus 380 to go undefeated in the regular season. Ohio State second at plus 400. Oregon third at plus 440. Both at 10.5 wins. Around the same numbers on that, both like basically even money. The FanDuel has a thing on who's going to win at least 10 regular season games. Oregon has the best odds at minus 320. Penn State was second at minus 310. Ohio State third at minus 300. So Oregon to win at least 10 games, Oregon's number one in the country in the betting odds. And then to make the playoff, Ohio State minus 325, Oregon minus 265. They are both high on the list of the 8 minus odds playoff teams that we talked about the other day, Landis. The perception, I think, of these teams going into this season, how good they are going to be, is very, very similar. I think the idea, they both play Penn State, and then Oregon's big non-conference game is Oklahoma State, and Ohio State's big non-conference game is Texas. So there's a schedule difference there. On Ohio State has 2 very difficult games in addition to the Michigan game, which is obviously very difficult for them right now. And Oregon kind of only has 1 with the road game at Penn State. But otherwise, like generally viewed very similarly, would you say?
I think so. Yeah. And it helps too that they split on the field last year too. Because I think if that had that not happened, maybe you would still think Ohio State was a few degrees like significantly better than Oregon, perhaps. But I don't think that's the case. Ohio State is, it's the better program with a longer track record of success. But I do think the programs and the individual teams for 2025 are viewed quite similarly. Yeah.
So let's compare these two teams. Who would you rather be in 2025 in 7 different categories? Quarterback, skill position players, offensive line, defensive front 7, secondary, coaching, and schedule/intangibles. We'll start at quarterback. Landis, you have the Buckeyes. I have the Ducks. Mm-hmm. Who's Ohio State's quarterback? The people are very curious for you to break this news.
So everyone thinks it's going to. Let me ask you a question.
Whoa!
Let me ask you a question.
You started this conversation with everyone thinks. I'm strapped in now.
No. So here's what Ryan Day said after spring practice, that Lincoln Kienholz, third-year quarterback, was ahead of Julian Sayin, and then that Julian Sayin played better than Lincoln Kienholz in Ohio State spring game, which I think if you watched Ohio State spring game, you would agree with. But I don't think Lincoln Kienholz played poorly in Ohio State spring game either. But Sayin made some better throws in that game. Some throws that you think to yourself like that's what an Ohio State quarterback should be able to do and should look like. Am I allowed to be curious about Lincoln Kienholz in this ongoing competition where a starter has yet to be named, or should I just not even go down that road and we should just act like Julian Sayin is going to be the starter?
I think it's just a coach not giving the job to the obvious odds-on favorite, wanting him to be pushed in every way, no assumptions, wanting to keep the guy who's probably going to be the guy who's going to be the backup, wanting to keep him involved, acknowledge his good play. It just serves everybody more than ever. It serves everybody to encourage a quarterback competition, whether it's true or not.
Sure.
Because it keeps your guy from transferring in the spring. It keeps the guy who thinks he maybe isn't going to be the guy. It's I don't know. It still could be you. And no assumptions about the starter. He's not coasting. He's busting his butt into the 3rd week in August until Ryan Day names the starter. But I think... I don't know what's the word. If Julian Sayin is not the starting quarterback for Ohio State against Texas, and he's healthy, I think that is blank for Ohio State. And the word that I'm looking for is not the best. It's some kind of, and I guess that could be predicated on, well, the reason he's not the starting quarterback is because he's the 2nd best quarterback in college football, and Lincoln Kienholz is the best quarterback in college football, and that's why this is happening. And I guess if I leave 1% of the slice of the pie for that, but otherwise it means it didn't go to plan. And I just think at programs like this, they know what the plan is.
I don't know that I agree with that, because Julian Sayin wasn't an Ohio State plan 6 months ago.
I know.
They lucked into getting him.
Aaron Noland was, and then they got Julian Sayin, and then Lincoln Kienholz. But if that's the definition, Lincoln Kienholz wasn't really a plan either. He was a late flip.
It was a late
in his class when things flipped from Washington, when things in that class didn't necessarily go according to plan. I don't know. Lincoln Kienholz is not like the recruiting profile of a quarterback who would be planned to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. Now, again,
a 4-star top 200 player going into his third season, who was the 15th quarterback in the country, who was ranked ahead of Lenora Sellers, Marcel Reed, and Sam Levitt.
All right, there's a Kienholz hive. All right, I'm going to let you go. You're Ohio State. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go.
I don't think it's a Kienholz hive. I just I'm with you that like I'm always circumspect about this stuff, right? I think coaches just say what they need to say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like less that way with this. Like if you ask me right now who's going to be Ohio State starting quarterback, I'm going to pick Julian Sayin because that's probably the way it's going to go.
Yeah,
I think there are some like comparisons between Will Howard and Lincoln Kienholz that might help him.
Okay,
and that's just like size
like
and
big
physicality
athlete,
and athleticism.
Right?
Now, Will Howard was crazy experienced, and Lincoln Kienholz is not. Neither one of these guys is really experienced, which is interesting. So, like, I think it'll be Sayin, but I would give a little more credence to any Lincoln Kienholz buzz maybe than I would have for like Devin Brown buzz when we were trying to figure out if Devin Brown ever had a shot at being Ohio State's quarterback. Because I actually think for all the things that were said about Devin Brown and his athleticism, Lincoln Kienholz is the guy that actually has that. It's just a matter of can he kind of put it all together? Can he be the consistent passer? But like he can move and he's a big dude and he's a 3-sport athlete in high school. Like there are things to like with him. But I do think it'll be Sayin. I think that's I'm not going to like plant my flag in June and say Lincoln Kienholz is going to be Ohio State's starting quarterback necessarily. But I don't want to be dismissive entirely of the notion that he can win this competition.
But Julian Sayin, again, for the people who don't know it, was the number 1 quarterback in his class. He's a second-year player. Like he is on the track. Like this is and this is interesting though. If the Lincoln Kienholz comparison is Will Howard, the Julian Sayin comparison is CJ Stroud. So it's like Will Howard versus CJ Stroud, and it's like, well, one of those guys was the second pick in the draft and a Heisman candidate, and the other guy won the national title. And wasn't like, and it doesn't mean that CJ Stroud wasn't good enough to win the national title, but I think it would be an upset of ginormous proportions that would make me have major questions about what's going on. Like what happened that Julian Sayin didn't win the job? I would have major questions about that. And then if Lincoln Kienholz came out and like threw for 225 and ran for 81 and ran people over and hit deep shots at Jeremiah Smith, and it was like, that's it, Doug. And they beat Texas. I'd been like, I don't know what's going on here. Ryan Day, I don't think this guy knows what he's doing. And then that happened. And I was like, oh, well, okay. But my instinct would be, oh, wow, this did not go as they thought it would be.
I think that's a fair instinct. I just don't know that my jump would not be to immediately, like, there's a problem here. Like, I actually, it would be shocking. I think you could qualify it as shocking if that were to happen, but I don't think it would be indicative of like some underlying issue. I think it would just mean like Lincoln Kienholz in year 3 kind of hit a stride, and Julian Sayin in year 2 with no experience still needs more time to be exactly what Ohio State needs him to be, which I don't, maybe is not acceptable given his recruiting pedigree. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. Again, I'm not predicting it to happen, but I think it could, I guess is what I'm saying. So I don't know. Like,
so my read at the moment of the things that are said is these are the things a coach says. I've already explained that. Your read is it actually is a competition. And that now, Ryan Day going into August, when they get to camp, Ryan Day does not know who the starting quarterback is going to be. Is that what you think the case is?
No, I think he probably has a lean that it'll be Sayin.
Okay.
But I don't know that he knows definitively. And the part of it for me is too, like, there are times when things like this are said, and then you see the two players on the field and go, okay, like, let's be realistic about this.
Yes.
But I didn't come away from the spring game feeling that. I thought they both played really well.
Okay.
And like Kienholz's 2 touchdowns that he threw in the spring game were like a catch and run from Mylan Graham where it was like no one touched him, and then a wide open swing pass. And Julian Sayin's touchdown pass was like a layered over the linebacker middle of the field to Max Clare. Like, it was a much better throw on the touchdown. Like, I think everyone who watches the two play understand that Julian Sayin's ceiling as a pure passer is much higher than Lincoln Kienholz's. But Kienholz has the athleticism and the size, and if Sayin is like not rare in the go with that passing ability. Just like then I think there's an opportunity for Keenholz to steal it from him if he's not on it exactly throughout camp.
Can I tell you what I think you're thinking of? That is not Will Howard. And also, we've been talking about it in our project. And you, to your credit, thought it in the moment and came away, I think, a little scarred by the experience.
Oh, Burrow and Haskins.
I think you got a little Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins thing here. And Julian Sayin is Dwayne Haskins, the better passer. And Lincoln Keenholz is Joe Burrow, like better athlete, physical, can run, do all the things it takes to win, and actually maybe is like more gifted and has real talent than people realize. And in the moment, I was like, it's got to be Haskins. I wrote it. It's got to be Haskins. The way he throws the ball, it has to be Dwayne Haskins. And you in the moment, we were working together then at Cleveland.com, and you were like, I don't know, man. I like Joe Burrow. And then Joe Burrowed. And now you're sitting here wondering if Lincoln Keenholz is going to win the Heisman and the national championship at whatever.
I don't think I'm all the way there, but maybe.
Yeah, you are.
You're tough.
Scarred.
It's
You're
tough.
scarred.
I'm a little scarred. And like Ryan Day has to make a decision. So I don't know. I guess we can. We'll just say it's going to be Keen or Sayin. We'll just say it's going to be Sayin. I actually think if it is Sayin, I actually think Keenholz could play a little bit as a guy who can run some.
Okay. That's interesting.
Ryan Day, I don't think he's been asked about that yet in the spring. That's more of like an August question, I think. But I could see that happening, especially with what Ohio State's losing at running back. And like Will Howard was such an important part of their rushing attack last year, especially in short yardage. And Julian Sayin's just not that player. So I could see a role for Keenholz even if he is likely to be quarterback too. Just quickly, like some of the history on this, like this is not the first time that Ryan Day will have taken a incredibly inexperienced quarterback and made him the starter. Justin Fields played 173 snaps as a freshman at Georgia in 2018 and attempted 40 passes, which actually isn't bad. And he started for the first time and was a Heisman Trophy finalist. CJ Stroud played 8 snaps in 2020 and attempted 0 passes. And then he started in 2021 and was a Heisman Trophy finalist. And then there's like the other side, which is Kyle McCord, who was more experienced in terms of years in the program than each of those two guys were. He was in his 3rd year when he took over as starter. Still hadn't played a ton, but he had a start under his belt. He had thrown 58 passes. And Kyle McCord was like a perfectly fine Big Ten quarterback, but not nearly good enough for Ohio State, I think in the end is how I would assess that. So like that's the other side of the coin, I guess, with Ryan Day and his quarterback development. But he's got two very good ones and one that was like not terrible, probably not quite good enough. So it's not like there's nothing on there you think to yourself like, boy, I don't know that this guy has it to get quarterbacks ready. So I think Ohio State is uniquely equipped to work in a green starting quarterback for the first time with all the expectations that come with that position.
Yeah. Okay. So do you feel good? How good do you feel about the Ohio State quarterback position? Because is the reason you are keeping Keenholz in the conversation because you think he has enough ability to beat out a good version of Julian Sayin? Or are you keeping Keenholz around a little bit because no matter what Julian Sayin's recruiting pedigree is, he hasn't played? And
I think it's more of that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, there's only one. Julian Sayin's size worries me a little bit.
Okay.
He's like listed as 6'1". I think that's a little generous. I was rewatching the spring game, and I think it was Yogi Roth was doing the color commentary, or maybe it was Jake Butt, one of the two, who said like, I think he's more like 5'11", 6 foot. So I don't know that he's 5'11". I don't know that he's 6'1". And like, you want to compare, like Dwayne Haskins and CJ Stroud were big cats, right? Like,
yes, they were
dudes that people fell off of them. So plenty of undersized quarterbacks make it work in college football, and Julian Sayin is certainly capable of that. But coming off of a season where Ohio State just had like a 6'4", 235-pound quarterback, it's a little jarring to look at Julian Sayin as the next guy in line.
But it's funny, but a year ago, we certainly at least had versions of a conversation of, well, if Will Howard's ceiling isn't high enough, maybe after the bye week, after the Oregon game, they can get to Julian Sayin as a true freshman. So Julian Sayin would have fit straight into like the CJ Stroud progression, right? And then the McCord thing got a little wonky, so they brought in Howard, and now I think it's reset in a good way. It's like, guess what? You can win with the different skill sets of quarterbacks. That's what good teams do. That's what good programs do. So now it's like, it's a little bit of recency bias to look at Will Howard and what he did and think, man, maybe that's what they want. But when they brought in Will Howard, it was like, well, this is different. Yeah, they act like they kind of want the run threat a little bit, but also they kind of want the pro passing attack. And that's, we have questions, is Will Howard that? So 12 months ago, Julian Sayin is like exactly what Ohio State wanted. And now, thanks to Will Howard, you can win more than one way at QB. Oh,
and throughout all of that season, whenever you ask Ryan Day, like, hey, what do you like about Will Howard? He always said he's big. Like, are you saying that because that's true, or are you saying that because that's what you want?
Right. And I think Ryan Day, I think Ryan Day is like a lot of the fans are. It's like, well, I thought I knew what I wanted, but then I got this, and it's like, well, I don't know, maybe I do want this now. It's like, right. But also, if you drop Julian Sayin in, and Julian Sayin's layering throws against Texas, and it's like, nope, that's it. That's what I want.
He's got a special arm. He does have a special arm. I feel like we're negging him a lot. Like he's got all. I am maybe. Like, if you go, he only threw whatever it was in the spring game, 17 of 24, I think he was.
Okay.
He like shows it all off. Like, he can drive the ball to the outside. He can layer throws. He's got good anticipation. He's got great accuracy. Like, all those boxes, if you're comparing he and Keenholz, like, they're all in Sayin's favor. Anything throwing related. Yeah.
Okay. And Ryan Day likes that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you still think, give me a percentage before. I know you dropped a bomb on us, Billy boy. So good. Percent chance of who's the starting quarterback for Ohio State.
I'd still say it's like a 90% chance it's Sayin.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Oregon. Dante Moore at Oregon is entering his third year of college football. He just had his third year of spring ball. He said it was his best spring by far. He was the starter at UCLA as a true freshman 2 years ago. He was 3-2 as a starter. He did not start the opener. He started the next two non-conference games. His first conference game was against Utah. That was the 12th best defense in the country that year by the Fremo Index. UCLA only scored 7 points in that game. His next game, it was his first conference win as a starting quarterback. And let me give you the stats from that game. Dante Moore in that game was 22 of 44 for 290 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions in a win for UCLA. The opposing quarterback in the Pac-12 in a loss was 19 of 39 for 197 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. So Dante Moore threw for 100 more yards and was 22 of 44 versus 19 of 39 and won the game. Mm-hmm. Dante Moore was a true freshman at UCLA. Do you know who that opposing quarterback was?
I was going to say Caleb Williams, but I guess they would have played later in the year.
Cam Ward, the number 1 pick in the draft this year. When Cam Ward was at Washington State. So on his resume, Dante Moore has a head-to-head win when he was a true freshman with better stats in a game where he threw 2 picks early and then like settled down and won against the guy who then went on to go to Miami and become the number 1 pick in the draft. This is a weird resume for Dante Moore. 3-2 as a starter, and then Chip Kelly benched him and went with the veteran Ethan Garbers. But you look inside the numbers, a lot of big-time throws for Dante Moore, a lot of turnover-worthy plays. The guy they went to had not many of either. He played 3 ranked conference teams, Utah, Washington State, Oregon State, to start the Pac-12 season, went 1-2 against them. UCLA didn't play another ranked team the rest of the year and went 4-3. But Chip Kelly was like, I don't know. He's losing games to ranked teams as a true freshman. I'm done with that guy. I was like, okay, I guess. And then he went to Oregon last year and didn't play. I think he played 29 snaps last year at Oregon as a backup. 29 snaps versus 432 the year before. He was 7 of 8 for 49 yards. So he's done his career in reverse. He played a lot in year 1. Then he transferred back to Oregon. And people, again, just to remind people of the story, he was committed to Oregon. He flipped late to UCLA, started at UCLA, had that weird year when Chip Kelly was in that weird place and about to stop being a head coach, then transferred back to Oregon. And so it's like he's a transfer, but he's not a transfer for Oregon the way Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix were. He was like a duck to begin with and then had a little vacation in Southern California for a year. So he's a year 3 guy. And again, to remind people, by the composite recruiting rankings in his class in 2023, the number 1 quarterback, Arch Manning, the number 2 quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, the number 3 quarterback, Dante Moore. That's what we're talking about here. Also in that class, 4 Jackson Arnold, 8 Eli Holstein, 9 Avery Johnson, 12 Dylan Lonergan, 13 Aiden Childs, 18 Lenore Sellers, 19 Austin Simmons, 20 Marcel Reed, 21 Sam Levitt.
You skipped over Lincoln Kienholz.
Lincoln Kienholz. I did not realize when I was listing Lenore Sellers and Avery Johnson and Sam Levitt that I should be including surefire Ohio State starter Lincoln Kienholz in that discussion. But it's just a reminder. Obviously, Oregon fans know this. I think Northern fans have an understanding of this, but it's weird, Landis. But actually, I'm not sure you couldn't argue that this path is almost better. To go from like, I didn't play at all as a freshman, then I played as a sophomore, and it was like, okay, I showed flashes, but then I got benched. I don't know. Versus I played in year 1 and they threw me in the deep end. And then I transferred and sat behind Dylan Gabriel and learned and absorbed and had no responsibilities other than get better for your future. Having been thrown in the deep end, it's not a path that anybody would plan, but I can see how it actually could maybe work for a quarterback as long as once you get thrown in the deep end in that year 2 reset, you're tutored the right way. You're developed the right way.
Yeah.
And I think what Oregon has in place with Will Stein and the way they run their offense, and they're every quarterback they have, they set up to make successful short throws and then take a couple shots down the field. And then you watch the guy. You watch him, UCLA highlights. There's a lot of like, he doesn't have anything. He had a tight end that got drafted in the 7th round. That was the only offensive player that got drafted on that UCLA offense. He had nothing. So like the stuff in the pocket when he played, like there's not always a ton there. But when it broke down and he got out on the edge and he's whipping throws on the run and stuff, and it's like, man, there is a lot there. And I said already a couple weeks ago, we watching him in the Oregon spring game, there's a lot there. He throws a really nice ball. And I think there's absolutely reason for huge upside, reason for people to be excited. Seemed like everybody was feeling good about spring. They're not handing him the job, Austin Novosad, who's the same in his class. They actually, like after Dante Moore flipped, they got Austin Novosad to flip to them. So they're both 3rd-year guys. He's in the competition. Achilles Smith Jr. is a true freshman. His dad was the number 3 pick in the draft out of Oregon once upon a time. But it's going to be Dante Moore, and I think he's going to be pretty darn good, man.
Was Austin Novosad committed to Ohio State at one point? He was definitely. They were looking. I wrote a story about.
They were looking at him. Wasn't he committed to Baylor, and then he came into Ohio State, and it was like, they're going to flip him late. Yeah, and then I don't know that he never commit or not.
He never committed.
But he was in the mix. Yeah,
but it was close. It was like him. Ohio State. It seemed like at different times, like Austin Novosad was going to be their quarterback, or Brock Glenn was going to be their quarterback.
Yes,
and ended up being Lincoln Kienholz. Yeah. That was a weird class. A weird class. I think.
By the way, I would like to say that when I said that Lincoln Kienholz wasn't ever the plan, when they were dorking around with Austin Novosad and Brock Glenn, they're like, we'll take Lincoln Kienholz. You got a little bit mad about that.
But at least they signed him out of high school.
They did. Okay.
Yeah,
is there so I think I've eased into Dante Moore.
Mm-hmm.
You can find Dante Moore and Heisman in headlines if you want to, like a Heisman candidate, that kind of thing. Like, I don't think we have to go there right away, but he's the same class as Nico and Arch, and he's played some, and he has a lot of talent, and he had a whole year of development, and there's a lot there. I think you can't go crazy here. But as we've sort of discussed, if you're excited about CJ Carr at Notre Dame, if you're excited about Bryce Underwood at Michigan, if you're excited about Julian Sayin at Ohio State, like these young quarterbacks in the North, like absolutely, Dante Moore, I think, is absolutely 100% in that group. And by the way, he's the oldest of any of them.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't write off Dante Moore because he didn't play well on a pretty bad team as a true freshman and like threw too many interceptions.
Yeah.
I think the reset it's going to be interesting to see what the reset did for him. I'm not I'm not like going to run all the way with it and say like watch out for Dante Moore, because I do feel like I need to see that those steps have been taken, but I think he was in a good position to take them.
Yeah.
Like it's just I'm a little bummed we didn't see him more last year, but like I kind of get why we didn't see him more last year too. The only like major thing here with me when you think about Dante Moore in Oregon is like, yes, there's going to be excellent players around him. I think, yes, their system is very quarterback friendly. Bo Nix was super experienced when he got there, and Dylan Gabriel was super experienced when he got there. And this is a different type of let's get this guy ready plan for Will Stein. Not to say that he can't do it. It's just like he hasn't had to do it at Oregon yet. So this will be a test for that. But he's definitely got, like, Dante Moore's got a great chance to be good. I was looking this up when I was digging in on Sayin a little bit. The quarterbacks who are currently in college football with like the highest 24/7 sports composite rating.
Okay.
The number 1 and number 2 are actually 2 freshmen this year, Bryce Underwood and Keelan Russell at Michigan and Alabama. Arch is 3rd, Nico is 4th, Dante Moore is 5th, and then Sayin is 6th.
Okay.
So like whatever by decimal points coming out of high school, I guess Dante Moore was considered a slightly better prospect than Julian Sayin.
Okay. So who are we taking?
I'm taking Ohio State because of its track record to get young quarterbacks ready. Like if you have 2 very, I think, pretty similar quarterback profiles here, but one team has had to live the life before and one hasn't. So I'll take the one that's done it and done it well.
Although Ohio State didn't do it last year, because actually the last time they tried to do it, it didn't go perfectly with Kyle McCord, with their own development. Like the CJ Stroud development, great.
Not
the Justin Fields development once he got to Ohio State, great. Dan Lanning said, it's like, why didn't you go in the portal this year? And he said he likes his quarterback room. And I think it sounds like there's going to always, I think, be open to the portal. And again, it's like, well, Dante Moore is a portal guy, but it's not at all the same thing as Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel. It's the difference of like, are you getting a finished product and plug and play? That's what, that's not what this is at all. There's a lot of development here that they did with Dante Moore. And he's their own guy. If it works, he's more talented than Dylan Gabriel. Bo Nix is a different kind of guy. Dylan Gabriel is by the time he got to Oregon, especially, is an execute the system kind of guy, right? But I think some of the stuff out of structure that Dante Moore is going to be able to do, if it works, there's a lot there. And I do think their system is designed, right, for a quarterback to be able to make quick decisions, quick throws, take a shot every now and then.
Yep.
I think there is a great chance that Dante Moore succeeds at a very high level this year. But I understand leaning Ohio State, but I would say it's not a huge lean. Would you agree with that?
I would say it's not a huge lean, and it's less about the individual players themselves and more about the structure around them, I guess.
But do you doubt Oregon's ability to develop a quarterback, or it's just they haven't done it in the Lanning era because they've gone the portal route with vets?
Yeah, I don't doubt it. I just want to see them try it before. Yeah.
So I think this is maybe like 52-48 kind of thing. This is pretty close, but we'll take Ohio State.
Yeah, I would take Ohio State.
All right, we'll speed up a little bit.
All right.
You think Jeremiah Smith's going to start for Ohio State, right?
Actually, I got some takes on that. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Can we change this up a little bit? Let's go like position by position and have our skill things back and forth. So let's start at running back. You start with Ohio State running back, then I'll go to Oregon running back, and we'll run through this stuff. What's Ohio State's running back situation?
Like of the skill positions, I think the one that's least certain, although I think it's still going to be pretty good. So Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are gone. Ohio State really landed on something last year with that pair and how they used him and how they managed their workloads and how they kept them fresh throughout the course of the season to where they just looked awesome, I thought, in the playoffs. So I'm assuming that they're going to try to copy that every season from here on out, which is to say, like, I don't know that we'll see like a bell cow Ohio State running back again. And maybe that's the way that football is going too. It's not Ohio State specific, but so they'll have at least 2 guys this year. James Peoples, second-year player who was the third running back last year, played a little bit, had 49 carries, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he's got good vision. He's got good burst. It's just can he take on a larger workload? It seemed like their running backs coach, Carlos Lachlan, was kind of going out of his way to pump the brakes on James Peoples. And my read on that was like, he's going to be good. You just don't want us to get too far over our skis with it yet. So I think he's ready. And I think like young guys can play at running back, no problem. And he'll be paired with CJ Donaldson, who's a transfer from West Virginia, who has a ton of experience, 2,000 rushing yards, 30 touchdowns at West Virginia in 3 years. He was a big, like bruising dude at West Virginia, playing at like 240 pounds for a lot of his career. He's a converted tight end. But he dropped a bunch of weight at Ohio State when he got there in the winter. He was running around at like 225, I think he said, maybe even a little less than that in spring ball, and could potentially, I suppose, play even later than that come the season. And then you just start thinking about like, okay, this guy who was already a pretty physical back might have some more agility to him. And I think that pairing together will be good. And then there's a true freshman, Bo Jackson, who Carlos Lachlan talked up a bunch in the spring, which I also thought was interesting. So I think they've got a pretty solid, deep room. Maybe not the top end talent of a Henderson or a Judkins, but I think plenty good enough and enough guys who can play for Ohio State to be what it wants to be.
Did Ohio State have the best running back room in the country last year?
Yeah, I think you'd say it was either Ohio State, Penn State, or Notre Dame. And I think by the end you would say it was Ohio State.
So what would you set as the expected percent that this room will get to of that room?
Oh,
knowing that was as good as it gets. Can Peoples and Donaldson and a little bit of Bo Jackson, is it 70% of that room? Can it be 85%?
I was going to say 85. I was going to say that's 85, I think. Yeah, I think it'd be pretty good. Yeah, that's like the I don't think like the best version of this room gets you to exactly what you had last year, but I think the best version of this room can get you to like 85% of what you had last year, which is still pretty good.
I think there's a chance at Oregon that they have an All-American running back. Mekhi Hughes is the Tulane transfer. He is the leading returning rusher in the nation. Last year, he had 265 carries for 1,401 yards. That was 10th in the nation, and everybody ahead of him is gone. He averaged 107 rushing yards per game. That was 20th in the nation. And at Tulane, he did play some big-time schools. He was 21 carries for 128 yards against Kansas State, 19 for 71 against Oklahoma, 14 for 66 in the American Conference Athletic Conference championship game against Army, only 8 for 29 in a bowl game against Florida, but Darian mentioned the quarterback didn't play in that game. He's excellent. And Tulane averaged 35 points a game last year. That was 16th in the nation, with a quarterback who transferred to Duke for a bunch of money and a running back who transferred to Oregon. He looks like a pro, Landis. And Jordan James was a really good back for them. And last year, and Bucky Irving before that. Irving was, I have it here, 4th round pick, and then was really good in the NFL. Jordan James with a 5th round pick this year. I think Mekhi Hughes is going to be better. Maybe not than Bucky Irving, but I think their running back play will be better than last year. And we liked Jordan James. Mekhi Hughes looks like a pro. He'll lower his pads and run over you. He'll make a cut in the hole at the second level. He runs away from you. He was, by some rankings, the number 1 back in the portal. Another one had him like 7th. I mean, I think he's arguably the best guy who moved in the portal. Justice Haynes from Alabama to Michigan, Rashawn Parker from Washington State to Utah. But like this guy, I think this might be the guy you would have taken.
His transfer portal ranking is weird. Like there were a lot of good running backs in the transfer portal this year, but like the idea that a guy that was that productive was 7th doesn't make any sense to me.
No. Running backs coach Rashad Samples talking about his ability to break tackles, his contact balance. You see that, his contact initiation. Like that's one of those guys. He, like, watching him, you actually like who he reminds me of a little bit. He's not quite as big, but he actually reminds me of Judkins a little bit, of Quinshon Judkins. That like he will be physical all over you, and then also pull away from you. And then they also have Noah Whittington, who was their number 2 back last year. And I don't think it would have been unreasonable for Oregon to be like, and now he's going to be the number 1 back. But that's not what they did. And instead, he's going to be like a really good number 2 back for them. I think their running back room is going to be awesome. And I think Hughes, we know how good Jeremiah Love is. We know how good Nick Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State are. But I think Hughes is going to be like in the conversation potentially as an All-American guy. So is that too much?
No, I think he will be. I thought it was a huge addition for Oregon. I think that's an offense that still wants to run the ball and like be, I think, sort of known for its physicality. And if it has a guy who can take on a large workload like that, it's going to give it to him. So I I think he's better than Jordan James. I don't even know if I'd compare him to Bucky Irving, like you said, because Bucky Irving was like more of like a slasher at times who got involved in the passing game too. I think Hughes is ready to be maybe it's hard to be the best running back in the Big Ten, I guess, with what Penn State has, but up there in that conversation, maybe he could be. I think he could still be. For as good as like Nick Singleton and Katron Allen are at Penn State, I think Mekhi Hughes could be the best running back in the Big Ten.
Yeah. And just the side story, if people don't know it, he's the older brother of Naeem Offord, who is a defensive back from Alabama. They're both from Alabama. And Offord was committed to Ohio State for the whole cycle and then flipped to Oregon at the end. And talking to reporters during the spring, Hughes said, it was my decision. It was my brother's decision. But wherever he planned to go, I was planning on going with him together. So what a lovely package deal to get a 5-star defensive back as a freshman. And by the way, his older brother is the leading returning rusher in college football. And I don't know that Hughes was a name that was very linked with Ohio State ever, but if they had just kept the offered commitment based on what Hughes just said, do they go James Peoples and Mekhi Hughes instead of CJ Donaldson? And then holy moly, what would we be talking about with Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, I like CJ Donaldson, but I like Mekhi Hughes more. So that would have been a pretty nice ad for Ohio State if they could have pulled that off.
So we're doing skill position overall, but I think the running back edges to Oregon.
I think I would go Oregon. Yeah, I would go Oregon at running back.
Tight end, your guy, Kenyon Sadiq. Terrence Ferguson was great last year, but Kenyon Sadiq is everything you want in a tight end, and he's going to be great. Terrence Ferguson was a second-round pick in the NFL draft. He was the 4th tight end off the board. I just would like to note, double-checking that, 15 tight ends drafted in the most recent NFL draft, 10 from the north, 4 from the south, 1 from the border. Northern tight ends rocked last year. And those 10 tight ends, 9 of them were from our 28 teams, and then Harold Fannin from Bowling Green. But it's like, we talked about how great our tight ends were last year. They were great. The NFL agreed. Terrence Ferguson is awesome. I think Kenyon Sadiq, there maybe is no drop off. And we'll get to the receivers at Oregon. I think both Mekhi Hughes and Kenyon Sadiq are All-American candidates.
Yeah, I mean, there are some good returning tight ends, including what Ohio State has. So I don't know.
Agreed.
I think he's a candidate. Like I was on Sadiq last year. Like he's super athletic.
Yes.
And just was sort of biding his time, and now it's his time. So like I think he's going to pop this year for sure.
But Ohio State might be better at tight end.
Yeah, Ohio State is I think inarguably deeper at tight end.
Yes,
I think there are 3 guys in Ohio State's tight end room that if you told Ryan Day like this guy's got to start, he'd say okay. That's Max Clare, Will Kasmarek, who transferred from Ohio University last year, and then I think the third would be Bennett Christian, who's like much more of an inline blocking tight end, but actually in having to play more like sort of toward the end of the year, I think actually like play pretty well. So with those 3, I think they're really well off. And Claire is just like a different type of dude. The transfer from Purdue, he was number 1 transfer tight end in the portal this year. He was, I would say, almost shockingly productive on an offense that had nothing else going for it.
Yeah.
So like that was pretty impressive. And now he's just going to be living a much different life in Ohio State's offense. And you can tell that Ryan Day is excited about kind of having that mismatch. And it's interesting because we're going to talk about receivers. Emeka Ibuka is off to the NFL, who was, who owned the slot position at Ohio State for the last 3 years. And I'm not assuming that it's going to be another receiver who's going to make up for that production from Ibuka from that position on the field, because I think Max Clare might be the guy who benefits most from those targets becoming available. So I don't know. We've never really seen like a monster type of receiving season from an Ohio State tight end. Cade Stover a couple of years ago, I think, had 50 something catches, and that was like the best we've seen in 3 decades from an Ohio State tight end. I think Claire's got a real shot to be something, maybe something even significantly better than that. When he's just soloed up all the time because he's playing next to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So this is maybe, so like I started covering Ohio State in 2014. This is the best the tight ends position's been since like I've been paying attention in that way to Ohio State.
Better than Jeremy Ruckert, Luke Farrell combo.
I think, well, potentially. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So I think Oregon's in very good shape at tight end. Ohio State wins the tight end matchup though.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think Ohio State would win the tight end matchup against maybe
most
everybody.
Teams.
Maybe everybody. Let's talk about receiver. Evan Stewart. So last year, the 5 leading targeted guys for Oregon were Tez Johnson. He's gone to the NFL. Tez Johnson, 101 targets, gone. Evan Stewart, 68 targets, hurt in the spring. Reports of a knee ligament issue that it's going to keep him out for months. And by the reporting of all the people on the Oregon beat, it seems like probably for the season. Mm-hmm. So he was going to be their number 1 returning receiver. Then Terrence Ferguson, the tight end, gone. Trayshawn Holden, another receiver, gone. Jordan James, running back, gone. So they're missing their top 5 leading targeted guys from a year ago. So they don't have a lot back. And the Evan Stewart injury hurts clearly based on what they lost. But I also don't think, we kind of talked about the other day, I don't think you can overdo it. Because I guess there were some reports maybe Evan Stewart was going to move back to the slot. And then like in this kind of offense, maybe you feed that slot guy. We've seen that. And then all of a sudden your numbers go up. Mm-hmm. But he had big games and then games where he didn't do much last year. So it's not like, and I know he was a 5-star recruit, but obviously it hurts, but I just don't want to overdo it with the Evan Stewart loss. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yeah, we talked about that when we brought it up a couple episodes ago. He's an important player. He's good. It'd be great for Oregon to have him. I don't think it derails their season that he's not there.
Because they have the number 1 receiver in the incoming class, and DeCorian Moore, who was the number 1 receiver, the number 4 overall player. A year ago, the number 1 freshman receiver in the country was Jeremiah Smith. The number 3 receiver was Ryan Williams at Alabama, and they both set the world on fire. Mm-hmm. Jeremiah Smith is 6'3". DeCorian Moore is 5'11". We can't go through this season comparing DeCorian Moore to Jeremiah Smith because nobody can win that comparison. You watch the DeCorian Moore highlights. Good hands, explosive with the ball in his hands, slippery. But he's not going to overwhelm you physically like Jeremiah Smith is. So it's just a different deal. So the question is, he's going to be good, and he was going to start for them no matter what happened with Evan Stewart. Can he be a number 1? Because I think he needs to be their number 1. And that's what we're going to find out. I think the answer is probably yes, but it might take a little time. And then they have a bunch of kind of veteran guys floating around. They have Malik Benson, who's a tall receiver, transferred from Florida State. I don't know. Justice Lowe, 5 starts last year, has not done a ton. He's a 4th-year guy, but there's maybe something there. Gary Bryant Jr. was their 4th receiver in 2023, hurt most of last year. Jurion Dickey played a little last year, but was like a 5-star recruit in 2023. Like they have a lot of guys in that mix, but I think it's going to, at a place like Oregon, Landis, right? It's not really about receivers who didn't do much in their first 2 or 3 years suddenly emerging in year 3 or year 4. It's like we bring in studs and they're studs right away, right? I mean, you're too good to be waiting for veterans to suddenly show up. So I think it's DeCorian Moore and then Jeremiah McClellan, who's an Ohio State flip, was the number 65 player in the class 2 years ago, the number 14 receiver from St. Louis. I think if he had stayed at Ohio State, he'd probably be in the mix to play this year as like the 3rd or 4th receiver at Ohio State, like not a guaranteed starter, but in that mix. And so then if he would have been like the, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th receiver at Ohio State, can he be the 2nd or 3rd receiver at Oregon? I think that's possible. So they're leaning on young guys who haven't done much. But I think they can do it. And they at least have a mix of veteran guys who can help fill in. But if they wind up leaning on those veteran guys, that talent level is going to be down from what they normally expect. So I think their receivers are okay with a chance to be very good. Do you agree generally with that assessment?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ohio State is Jeremiah Smith. So anyway.
Ohio State does have Jeremiah Smith, who, as I look right now, is 4th in the Heisman Trophy odds on FanDuel behind Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, and Cade Klubnik at plus 1,300. Can a receiver win a
little on that? I'd sprinkle a little on that.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, Devontae Smith just did it, but so we'll see. I don't know. I mean, he's the best player on that list of guys I just laid out. That's undeniable. 76 receptions, 1,315 yards, and 15 touchdowns as a true freshman for Jeremiah Smith. Of the 28 players who had at least 1,000 receiving yards last year, Smith was 2nd in yards per catch. Among players with at least 100 targets last year, Smith was third in the FBS and first in the Power 4 in yards per route run, which is just like numbers to say that he's good, which everybody already knows. He's excellent. He's the best player in college football, and he's a sophomore. But it's not just him, because Ohio State never is just about one receiver entirely. I think Carnell Tate is very good. He'll be wide receiver 2 after being wide receiver 3 last year. I think he's ready for that. More of an outside guy, but he can play in the slot. The thing with Ohio State is like they'll move everybody around. They're not really into sort of like the prototype, this guy's a slot, this guy's outside kind of thing. I think that will be interesting with Jeremiah Smith, who you saw an uptick in the percentage of snaps in the slot toward the end of last season. And we had this conversation a lot with Marvin Harrison Jr. as he went into his second year. And he ended up playing like almost 20% of his snaps in the slot in 2023. Last year, Jeremiah Smith was like 14%, 15%. I think you'll see that number go up this year as they move him around and try to, not get him doubled all the time. And he'll get involved in the run game too. We saw that a little bit last year. So I think it'll be exciting to see what they try to draw up for Jeremiah as he goes into his second year. I think Carnell Tate is ready to be wide receiver 2. Brandon Inniss is another 5-star guy who's just kind of been waiting in the wings. He's, I think, ready to step up. He is, I guess, maybe a little bit more of a prototypical slot guy just based off of size. And he can get involved in the run game as well. I think like not dissimilar from Emeka Egbuka. I'm not saying he's going to be him, because Emeka was great, but skill set wise, I think there's a lot of similarities there. Mylan Graham is another 5-star who didn't play really at all last year, but popped in the spring game big time. I think he could be ready to roll. There's another 5-star in Quincy Porter Jr., who's a freshman this year, who he was the 5th, I think, receiver in the composite ratings last year. DeCorian Moore was 1st. Quincy Porter was 5th. They're both top 25 players. He's big. He's I think all of 6'4", and he's got a big frame. It's hard to break through as a freshman at Ohio State, but Jeremiah Smith did it last year. We've seen Garrett Wilson do it in the past. I think Quincy Porter might have an opportunity to do that. So they're studs all over the place. They're deep. They have the best receiver in the country. Carnell Tate could be like a top 15 receiver in the country, I think. So yeah, I don't know. I can keep talking about how good they are, but I think we know that.
Yeah. So this is kind of the difference here. It's like, as you pointed out, DeCorian Moore and Quincy Porter. Moore is rated higher, but not that different. And it's because of injury. We're talking about DeCorian Moore probably being Oregon's number 1 receiver. And we're talking about Quincy Porter as being Ohio State's 5th receiver. And could he maybe get on the field?
Right.
For 2 true freshmen who are both 5-stars. I think McClellan would maybe be in that Mylan Graham mix. And then could you get a little time away from Brandon? When I talked about McClellan as a second-year guy, could he be Ohio State's 4th receiver? Maybe, right?
Yeah. Do you think a team has ever had, if Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Inniss, Mylan Graham, and Quincy Porter all play even a little bit this year, do you think a team has ever had 5-star receivers?
Do you think they should Ryan Day just have a formation with them on the field just so they can take a picture of it?
Yeah,
because they have the picture on the bench when it's Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. all huddled around, and it's that. Yeah, do a version of that. Yeah. Ohio State's going to win a wide receiver conversation against anybody.
Some NFL teams,
yeah. And Oregon's not. The injury hurts from a certainty standpoint, but Oregon's got some potential. But I think it's clear Ohio State at receiver. I think it's Ohio State at tight end with depth. I think it's Oregon at running back, but I think overall it's a skill edge for Ohio State. Mm-hmm. But if we were drafting skill players from these 2 teams, obviously Jeremiah Smith is the number 1 pick. I think Mekhi Hughes might be the number 2 pick.
I think he would be. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. This is just what Ohio State does better than anybody, but Oregon, and I am super interested. We're going to see it early, and they ease into it when we get to the schedule, how good Moore and McClellan might be. Need to be, but could be opportunity a little bit out of necessity, but then also holy moly, once you get the ball in their hands, they're great. I'm very curious. So, and it's just such a different thing. You think about where Oregon was with Dylan Gabriel and Tez Johnson last year, and it's just a bunch of vets, and we know Bo Nix and Tez Johnson are brothers, and they know each other so well. It's just been this established veteran passing game, and now you've got Dante Moore, Jeremiah McClellan, and DeCorian Moore, and it's a bunch of young guys that you're leaning on. So it's a whole new world, but it could be pretty good. All right, offensive line. We'll give that to Ohio State as well. Offensive line. Let's actually start with the Buckeyes. And the interesting thing here is there's transfer tackles all over the place on both teams.
Yeah, I'll start. So Ohio State returns 41% of its offensive line snaps. It's all on the interior. Tegra Shabola started 16 games at right guard. He's back. Carson Hinsman started 3 games at left guard and then 6 games at center after Seth McLaughlin was injured, and he's back. Austin Saraveld and Luke Montgomery combined to start 8 games at left guard. They are both back. So Hinsman's going to be the starting center. I thought he played well. He had to play 2 years ago and wasn't ready, but sort of had to play because they had no other option. Wasn't a starter to begin last year, but I thought when I called on him late in the year, both at guard and center, he played much better. So he's a starting center. And then you have guard is interesting. I think like Luke Montgomery will start at one of the guard positions. I don't know whether Austin Saraveld, who Ryan Day has said will start and has sort of been like the darling of Ohio State's offseason. If you'd like offseason weight room stuff and leadership and who's just making a move, it's Austin Saraveld. But he can play tackle too. So I don't know if he's going to start at guard or tackle, but I think he's going to start, which then like if he's in the mix at tackle, and he started at right tackle in the spring game, maybe there's competition there between Saraveld and Philip Daniels, who's the transfer from Minnesota, who had to start 4 games last year toward the end of the year because of some injuries Minnesota was going through, is rather inexperienced, I guess, beyond that, but like is a big, physical, athletic kind of dude who's got a pretty high ceiling, and he's got 3 years of eligibility left. And he was fairly highly rated as a transfer portal tackle. He was number 5 tackle in the portal. The other guy they added, Ethan Onianwa from Rice, was actually 13th. So Daniels is rated higher, but I think a lot of that is the eligibility that he has left compared to Onianwa, who only has 1 year of eligibility left, but he'll almost certainly be the starting left tackle. He has played a lot. He's made 34 starts at right tackle and left tackle, but prior to last year, honestly, like wasn't that good. At least if you go by like the PFF stuff, which I know can be a little precarious at times, but credited with just giving up a ton of pressures and sacks his first 2 years starting at Rice. But then last year at left tackle seemed to settle in. He has played some games against power conference teams. And in those 2 games, one was against Houston. The other was against Texas 2 years ago. It's not like he gave up a bunch of sacks in those games. So I guess that's good. He's 357 pounds. He's a big dude. And I think they gotta get that down probably for him to play consistently against some of the speed he's going to see at this level. But he's a guy that when Ohio State got him, was it Tom Luganbill said like this guy was going to be a day 2 draft pick, and I can't believe he opted to come back to college. So like he is well regarded as a tackle with real NFL upside. I think he has got the much better chance of starting than Daniels, who might get pushed by Austin Saraveld. But like the interior of this offensive line should be pretty good. And if you're just going by portal rankings, they at least went out there and got 2 pretty good tackles. You just have to project and see whether or not they're going to be good. But I think it's a fine offensive line situation, considering that they did have to go into the portal and get 2 starting tackles potentially.
Oregon also in the portal for 2 starting tackles, Isaiah World at left tackle and Alex Harkey at right tackle. World, number 1 tackle in the portal. Harkey was number 17. World was a 3-year starter at Nevada, but was only honorable mention All Mountain West last year, 6'8", 310. And this is one of those, again, it's like, it's hard to vote, whatever, but it's like Ethan Onianwa and Isaiah World are both like physical specimens that are like, holy moly, these are huge, awesome portal gets. And they were at Rice and Nevada, and it wasn't like people were saying like, well, he's the best player in the conference. It was like, I don't know. So anyway, but Oregon's fired up about Isaiah World and should be. And then Harkey is junior college, Colorado, then Texas State. Didn't play much his first 3 years, was 3rd team all Sun Belt last year as a starter at right tackle. So it's just kind of weird. Like, again, we love up transfers on the offensive line. So that's happening at both of these schools. But I feel like mostly people are like, yes, Oregon nailed the tackles in the portal. They're good to go. And then it's like, oh, they got guys from Nevada and Texas State who weren't even first team all conference. And then you kind of go, what? Right. And by the way, they lost 2 draft picks at tackle. Josh Connolly at left tackle was a 1st-round pick, and Johnny Cornelius was a 6th-round pick. They also lost their starters at guard, Marcus Harper and Nishad Strother, both gone, didn't get drafted, but they have maybe the best center in the country back. I'm going to say help me with this last name. Poncho. Give me the Poncho last name. Lalaulu?
Lalaulu.
Lalaulu. Awesome last year. Was a guard to start the year. Moved to center for game 3 and was like incredibly important for settling down their offensive line, which you talked about a ton last year. He's back. He's great. Left guard's going to be Emmanuel Pregnon, was a 3-year starter at Wyoming, then 2 years at USC, 36 career starts, was second team All Big Ten last year. And then at right guard, it's either going to be Matthew Bedford, who is going to be in his 7th year, was hurt all last year, former starter at Indiana, 38 career starts at Indiana, came to Oregon last year and got hurt right away. Or Dave Iuli, who started 5 games last year, is trying to drop some weight to be in that competition. Anyway, going to be 3 starters on the offensive line out of the portal, a returning center who's awesome, and 2 real dudes at guard that you feel good about. Both portal guys at tackle are 1-year guys, so like they've got to build it, and it feels like they are building it a little bit. They have some younger guys who I don't know that they'll have to get back in the portal next year, but for now they patch their holes, and I think it's Oregon. I think Oregon wins this.
It's pretty tough, I think, because like Ohio State like made a run obviously to winning the national championship, and the offensive line was such a big part of that, and like the depth that they displayed and like sort of the resolve that they displayed, like that is still in the back of my mind when I try to figure out exactly what this offensive line is going to be this year. I think Ohio State is better at guard than
Oregon.
Yeah. I think Oregon's better at center. And then tackles like a wash.
Better than Pregnon. Better than Pregnon.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I don't know if I agree with that.
Pregnon might be the best individual player, but Ohio State I think is going to be solid at both guard spots, and the other guard spot's a bit of a question mark for Oregon.
Well, it's a question, but I mean, Bedford's a Big Ten starting guard who just got hurt last year.
Yeah, but I don't know like what's he going to be when he comes back from his injury. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's a 3-year starter in the Big Ten though, and Iuli played decent when he got back from being hurt last year. He had to go in because Harper got hurt, and then Harper came back and then took the starting job back for the game against Ohio State in the playoff. I think Oregon's in pretty good shape, and I mean, they have the number 1, whatever portal rankings mean. They got the number 1 tackle. So I agree that it's close. A lot of new faces, but I think both should be fine. But I'd say lean Oregon.
I think leaning Oregon's fair. It's interesting that Harkey and World are so well regarded compared to like Onionwa, for instance, when like as you said, like Oregon got AJ Cornelius from Rhode Island. Like that guy was a 2-year starter who was a first-team all-conference player. Like that was
right.
That had a little more weight to it, I think, than these guys. But I don't know. People think World might be the first tackle taken in the draft next year too. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I think leaning Oregon's right. I think leaning it's not a wide gap for me, but I think it's a slight lean to Oregon.
Okay, we got a little.
Ohio State has a new offensive line coach too, for whatever that's worth.
Oh yeah, that's true. But everyone likes him.
Yeah.
But Justin Fry, but the reason I like him is because Justin Fry wasn't great at recruiting, but then when they needed to like patch holes in the middle of the year and do things and like use their depth to sustain a national title run, he did a good job coaching up that room. And he went to the NFL. Okay. We're going to take a break here, Mike, instead of where I had, because we got a little slowed down. So we're going to we got to come back and do defensive front 7, secondary, coaches, intangibles, and a lot more. But a quick break here on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. Like, subscribe, tell a friend. Landis, defensive front 7 for Ohio State. They lost a ton. How good are they going to be?
Yeah, from the front 7, Ohio State lost Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton, and Cody Simon, all drafted with an average draft position of number 92 overall. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Do you want to go position by position for this like we did with the skill?
Sure.
So where do you want to start?
You decide, and I'll follow.
All right. Well, I'll start where I think Ohio State is strongest, which is linebacker. Sonny Styles is back for a second season starting at linebacker. Big, super athletic. I think probably would have been drafted. He's young. He doesn't turn 21 until November. So like he would have been a very young NFL rookie, which I think is part of the reason why he came back. Also, he only had 1 year of playing linebacker, so that makes sense too. But he certainly would have been drafted had he left, just based off athleticism alone. But then I also thought he played well and kind of settled into playing linebacker last year as well. Also, I don't know that he's going to be their best linebacker this year because Rivalry is playing next to him, stepping up. He was a third linebacker last year, and he is, I don't know, bigger and more athletic than Sonny Styles is. It's a real freak show at linebacker for Ohio State with these two guys playing there. And there's some younger guys there too that Ohio State's excited about to help fill out some depth, including Peyton Pierce, who's going into his second season. But I don't know that there are many teams out there that are going to throw out a linebacker tandem as big and as athletic as Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese are. I guess the only question with Reese is getting more experience, but he played 300 something snaps last year. It's not like he's not done this before. Both of them I also have, I think, pass rushing upside, depending on how they want to be utilized, which I think could be important for Ohio State when we get to defensive line. But linebacker, I think, is maybe, well, it's hard with Caleb Downs. Maybe the strength of the defense. Yeah.
Oregon in pretty good shape. Two of their three main guys back. Bryce Betcher, who everybody loved last year. Devin Jackson, good player. And they lost Jeffrey Bossa to the draft. Blake Purchase. And again, some of this stuff is like, is it an edge? Is it a linebacker? But can help. Redshirted last year. Had a good spring. Dan Lanning said he changed his body. So I think they're in pretty good shape. Bryce Betcher was kind of like a revelation last year. And I think he was one of like the extra eligibility guys. So like for him to be back is really big. And I think they're in very good shape. It's not the best part of the defense, but I think they're in very good shape. And it's maybe linebacker is a little more dynamic for Ohio State, but I don't think Oregon has anything to be worried about.
Yeah, I think it's a solid position group. I would lean towards Ohio State's athletic upside, but I think they're both pretty solid position groups. I'll go to defensive end for Ohio State. Where again, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer are gone. Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry are back going into their fourth years. They've just sort of been like solid career backups. And now at least Jackson, I think, is going to be asked to start. I think Curry might still end up being a little bit more of a backup rotational guy with what Ohio State has done in the transfer portal, bringing in Bo Atkinson from UNC after the spring and Logan George from Idaho. Idaho State.
Let's go, Landis. This is a northern show.
Practice. I know.
Can't get your Idaho's mixed up.
It's Idaho. Not a Vandal. George is an up transfer who was obviously, he was productive last year. 19 and a half tackles for loss was like a pretty solid FCS defensive lineman. He's not like a screaming off the edge kind of pass rusher, but I think, good against the run, solid against the pass. I think like a Jack Sawyer light kind of player I could see him being. Jackson looks like a monster, but he's just never really kind of put it all together. I don't think. Maybe this is the year that he does it.
Maybe
Curry's smaller, like a little bit of a mismatch problem, but I think because he's smaller, he's not a guy that I don't think he can play like 45 snaps a game at defensive end.
Okay.
So I think there'll be a rotation there. Atkinson is interesting. Atkinson was one of the better players available, just sort of regardless of position in the spring portal. Was one of the top defensive ends overall in the portal, pretty productive at UNC last year. I think it was 7.5 sacks. Yeah, 7.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 25 pressures. Just has some juice and productivity that I think Ohio State was looking for. And then like a wild card at defensive end for Ohio State would be CJ Hicks, who's moving from linebacker. He's never really been able to get on the field at linebacker. This is his last year of eligibility, and I don't know what to expect, but maybe he's a guy that might rack up a couple of sacks because the one thing he does seem pretty good at is like blitzing. So I think they're going to play 4 and possibly 5 defensive ends, and none of them have the upside of Tuimoloau or Sawyer, but collectively I think can be pretty solid.
Good job by them supplementing. Like Bo Atkins is a little bit of a luxury, right? But if you can add a good player in the portal, you do. And Kenyatta Jackson is very high on my list of players in the North. I'm most interested to see what he does this year because he's a fourth-year guy who's never really had much of a chance to play. So you're a veteran that's still defined by potential. And does that mean that it's just kind of going to float away in the wind and never happened? Or does it mean that there's a monster hiding in there that's ready to explode because he was behind two awesome college football players in Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau for the past 3 years? So super intrigued by that. Oregon, much more certainty. The main two guys off the edge, Mateo Uyunglele and Tatum Tuioti, both really good. And when Jordan Birch got hurt last year, he was a 3rd-round pick, but he was out for time last year. And that's when they were playing both of those guys at the same time, and they really came into their own. So they sort of got an opportunity because of injury that like Kenyatta Jackson never really has gotten, but they're excellent. And then they have a guy, Elijah Rushing, who was their top recruit in the class of 2024, who's a 5-star, who has a chance to mix in there. But I think to have Tuioti and Uyunglele back coming off the edge is huge, and I think it's Oregon gets the edge here based on how good those guys are.
Yeah, I would give the edge to Oregon at defensive end too. I think Ohio State is going to be pretty good, but like not elite at defensive end. But I think Mateo especially could be one of the better defensive ends in the country.
I agree. I'll start at tackle then, because both these teams lost great players to the draft at tackle. Mm-hmm. Derek Harmon, who I talked about a ton last year, I think at times was Oregon's best player, was a 1st-round pick at tackle. Jamari Caldwell was a 3rd-round pick. Both gone, obviously. You can't be a 3rd-round pick and then still be in college. Amari Washington was like their 3rd tackle last year, and I think is a guy that there's good reasons to be excited about. But really, this conversation is about Bear Alexander, and I don't love this conversation. Transfer from USC, played at Georgia in 2022, was at USC in 23 and 24, but decided to redshirt at USC after 3 games last year. Just said, I'm not playing enough and I'm out. He played 69 snaps in the first 3 games. There were 2 defensive tackles who were playing more than him, and then a third that was playing about as much as him. And he's like, I'm Bear Alexander. I'm too good for this. And it's not like it would have been his last year. It was only his 3rd year of college football, but he shut it down and redshirted. And now if you think that like, oh, the guy who shut it down and redshirted at USC, which is a mess because he wasn't playing enough, and he's going to come replace Derek Harmon, that is not a plan. So like, that is not a plan. So just like, you could miss me a little bit with the Bear Alexander conversation. And if he's good, fine. And I'm not saying that guys shouldn't look out for themselves, but if he's good, fine. I don't really think it's that interesting. They have other young guys who are really interesting. Tion Gray, 345 pounds, has a chance to do some good stuff. Aiden Brayland is a 5-star 2nd-year player that people are very excited about. He can play end or tackle. So I think they have Washington moving up, and then a couple other guys young guys in the mix, young, really good recruits in the mix. I think they'll be okay, but you can't replace Derek Harmon, and you can't replace him with Bear Alexander. So I think they'll be okay at tackle.
Yeah. I predict that Bear Alexander will be 4th in defensive tackle snaps for Oregon by the end of the year. and I'm with you. I don't love the player. I don't love the way that he's gotten to Oregon.
Transfer to Idaho in September.
Yeah,
because he's 4th in
school.
I mean, it's
school
fine.
number 9.
I don't mean it's just, and again, it's more about perception. It's like, oh, Bear Alexander, what you thought he was.
Because it's the name, man. It's the name. Can you have a better name for a defensive lineman than Bear?
Oh, I know. He was supposed to be the next Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis, great tackle at Georgia. And then he left after a year and went to USC and like couldn't get on the field enough to make himself happy. So now he's going to like replace Derek Harmon. It's not going to happen. All right. Ohio State.
I think Ohio State's top 2 defensive tackles are going to be very good. They're both young and haven't played a ton. It's Caden McDonald, who's going into his 3rd year, who's played meaningful snaps. Like he was on the field for the goal line, one of the goal line stands against Penn State last year. He was right in the thick of that, getting it done. Like he's a big 6'3", 323 pounds, super athletic. I can't believe Georgia didn't want him. He was in their backyard and Ohio State stole him. I think he's going to be very good. And then the other is Edric Houston, former 5-star defensive end who converted to defensive tackle like midway through last season as a true freshman. And just going to be like a bit of a pass rushing menace in the interior of the defensive line. So those 2 guys I think are good and will be good. I am borderline shocked that Ohio State did not add a defensive tackle in the transfer portal.
Okay.
Because I don't know what the depth is going to be. Like there's Tywone Malone, who transferred from Ole Miss a couple of years ago, was a baseball player and a football player, and it was always like, well, just wait till he focuses solely on football, then he's going to take off. This will be his third year at Ohio State. It hasn't happened yet. Maybe it can. He was a fairly highly rated recruit many years ago, but I don't know that I see him being anything more than a rotational piece. Will Smith Jr., son of the Ohio State legend Will Smith, like was not a highly rated recruit and then got hurt and hasn't played, but I think had a pretty good spring. So he's an option. Jason Moore was another guy who was a highly rated defensive end coming out of high school, also switched to defensive tackle. He has not played a ton either. I think there's a chance that like Jarquez Carter, who's a 4-star top 100 or top 200, freshman, might play some. I don't know how to read the fact that Ohio State didn't add a defensive tackle, because that to me was the biggest glaring addition they needed to make in the portal. They didn't, maybe aside from offensive line, and they didn't do it. And I don't necessarily read it as a ringing endorsement of the guys that are behind Edric Houston and Caden McDonald. It more makes me think that Ohio State's going to change the way it plays defense up front. And maybe you'll see more odd fronts. Matt Patricia's the new defensive coordinator, which we'll talk about. I think Ohio State, which has forever been a 4-down team, might mix it up a little more, because they don't have a ton of depth at defensive tackle. They have more depth at defensive end. They have 2 very good defensive tackles, and they got a couple of freaks at linebackers. So I am very much on alert for a different looking Ohio State defense this fall.
I think Aiden Breland is in the conversation, like with Edric Houston, of a guy who can play outside and in, be a pass rusher on the inside, like that kind of thing. I think if we're drafting on the defensive line, I think the first 2 picks are Uiagalelei and Tuioti, right? I think those are, but
yeah, I mean, I think you could talk yourself into Houston just based purely on 5-star upside, but Tuioti has played and been productive. So
and again, but I think Breland's in that conversation. I think it's close. I think it's linebacker for Ohio State. I think it's edge for Oregon. I think tackle's close. So who do you think gets the front 7 edge?
I'd probably give a slight edge to Oregon.
My instinct is Oregon also.
I think it's very close. I think edge is unquestionably Oregon. I think you could make the argument that Ohio State's top 2 tackles will be better than Oregon's top 2 tackles. And Ohio State doesn't have just the wild card uncertainty of a Bear Alexander, which makes me feel better about it. But I don't think for as high as I am on Ohio State's linebackers, I don't think there's a gigantic gap between their linebackers and Oregon's linebackers either. They're just sort of different styles of player. So I'd go slightly in Oregon. It's practically a tie, but maybe I'll give a lean to Oregon.
All right, let's go secondary. I'll actually start at secondary for Oregon because they've lost everybody. They had 5 secondary players who played at least 600 snaps last year. Like, they played their 5 guys in the secondary. That's who they played, and they're all gone. So, okay, start from scratch. But here's the thing. Do you know how many of those 5 secondary players who all went pro, do you know how many of them were drafted?
1?
None. So it doesn't mean that Jabbar Muhammad and Kobe Savage and Nico Reed and all these guys weren't good players, but it's not the same as losing Jordan Birch and Derek Harmon and Jamari Caldwell up front. Okay. So it's a complete reset, but I actually think they have a chance to be better. So at corner, Ife Obadegwu, who was one of my guys to watch in the spring coming in, he's a 2nd-year player, was a really highly rated recruit, top 100 player out of Maryland. And then guess what, Landis? Had an awesome spring.
Yeah.
Co-defensive coordinators, got long arms, tremendous wingspan. I'm quoting the coordinator. Gets his hands on guys. He's physical, has the right mentality and mindset. He's made of the right stuff. I think he has a really bright future here at Oregon. He is a long, physical guy who doesn't say anything and just plays. I think he is going to be one of the breakout stars of the North. Also at corner, Julio Florence was a starter in 23, hurt all last year. So like a veteran guy that could mix in there. And then Taron Johnson, 2-year starter at Northwestern as a transfer. So those, I think, are your 3 main guys at outside corner. I think you're in pretty good shape. Safety, Dylan Thieneman from Purdue, was a freshman All-American, was awesome last year, was the best safety in the portal, was the number 11 player in the portal. He's in. He's going to be great. We know that. They also added Jaden Kennedy, who's a transfer from Ole Miss in year 5. He might start in the slot. And then Kingston Lopa, who played a little bit at the end of last year, could be the other safety. The bottom line is, I think they have like Thieneman's going to be a star. Thieneman is a star. I think Obadegwu's gonna be a star, and then they have 4 other guys for 3 spots that I think they should be in good shape. So I do think in the end they lost everybody. I think their secondary can be better than last year.
I think it can be
And
too. Yeah.
and the other thing is guys who are in their second year, they have 4 players who are second year players in the secondary who are top 150 players in the country in the recruiting class. And they have 4 players who are true freshmen this year who are top 100 players who are secondary recruits for them. Naeem Offord from Alabama, Brandon Finney from Maryland, Trey McNutt from Ohio, and Dorian Brew from Texas. And Ohio State was involved with Offord, McNutt, and Brew. Like, they've been rebuilding their secondary on the fly. This is the second straight year they've done that. They have young dudes in the secondary. I think they want to be done with doing that, with rebuilding their secondary in the portal every year. But this is one more year of doing it. And I think between Florence coming back from injury, adding Thiedemann, adding Kennedy, adding Taron Johnson, I think they'll be in very good shape. I think it's going to be a good secondary, Landis.
I think it will be. I think actually in the end, like looking back at Oregon's season last year, at least defensively, like secondary kind of ended up being their Achilles heel.
Yeah,
Ohio State didn't quite crack it when they played in the regular season, but they shredded it when they played in the Rose Bowl. So
yes.
I think if Oregon wants to win a championship, they have to be better in the secondary than they were last year. Even though like individually, all those guys were fairly solid players. I said going into the season, like I don't like rebuilding your secondary. I don't like rebuilding your O-line. I don't like rebuilding your secondary through the portal year over year. And I think you saw some of the issues that can come along with that for Oregon last year. I think some of the individual talents are probably a little better this year, and some younger guys in the system I think will help them be better. Ohio State lost some guys, but didn't lose its best guy, and brings a decent amount back in its secondary. 5 players played 300 snaps in the secondary last year for Ohio State. 3 of them are back. Caleb Downs, Davis Nigbenosin, and Jermaine Matthews. Caleb Downs is the best safety in the country, probably the best defensive player in the country. It's a similar conversation to Jeremiah Smith. I don't know how many different ways I can say he's good. And it's a matter of how Matt Patricia chooses to use him. I do think he's better. I don't even know if he's better. I just want him around the ball. So the idea of if your linebackers have some pass rushing upside, can you drop one of them down and then you start playing Caleb Downs in the box a little more? That could be fun. I'd watch that. So we'll see exactly what that looks like.
We loved how Jim Knowles used Caleb Downs in the back half of last season, and that was getting him down closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I think you'll see more of that with you could even the one questionable spot for me for Ohio State secondary is the nickel position, where Jordan Hancock has played the last 2 years, went off to the NFL. Good player, versatile player, physical against the run, really good in coverage, just exactly what you want there. I could see Matt Patricia letting Caleb Downs play a little bit of that. We'll see. Okay. Not a full-time move to nickel, obviously, because you don't want Caleb Downs playing full-time in any one position. You want to keep moving him around the board, but I wonder if they might try to address some of that uncertainty with Caleb Downs. At corner, Igbenosin is back. Could have gone pro. I think would have gotten drafted. His issue is just penalties. He was the most penalized defensive player in the country last year.
Not close.
16, and the next closest guy had 11, according to PFF. But coverage wise is good and doesn't give up really a lot. Good. And he just needs to stop grabbing receivers. And I think he'll be a good corner. I think Jermaine Matthews, who's stepping up on the other side to replace Denzel Burke, was probably better than Burke last year anyway. And I think Ohio State will be better at that position, even though Denzel Burke was a fine player for Ohio State. I think Jermaine Matthews is an upgrade. And then there's some young guys.
I said Obadegbu, I think could be a revelation on Northern Star. I think Jermaine Matthews could be as well.
Yes. And he's got a personality type on the field that if he's good, people will know.
Yeah. Love it.
He'll let you know. Couple interesting young corners. Aaron Scott had a really good spring. I think he could be the third corner there. Devin Sanchez is a 5-star who was done no favors by the splash that Jeremiah Smith made as a true freshman as soon as he got to Ohio State. Devin Sanchez didn't quite do the same thing in his first spring at Ohio State, and that's fine. He's going to be very good, I think. So I could see him pushing for playing time in a significant way this year. So I think there's 2, I think, good corners there and 2 others you can add to that mix that have a lot of upside. Need to replace Lathan Ransom at the other safety spot. But I actually think they have guys to do it. Yeah,
Good
good,
player.
solid,
Underrated
like
player.
was cracking helmets last year. Just
Oh,
kind of got
leader.
overshadowed because you're playing next to Caleb Downs, but that's liable to happen when you're playing next to Caleb Downs. But he's a really good football player, Lathan Ransom, for a number of years at Ohio State. Malik Hartford going into his third year and Jalen McClain going into his second year are both kind of battling to replace him. I actually think in the end both will end up playing. I could see whether that's a shared starting role or Matt Patricia wants to play some more kind of 3 safety stuff, which he did in the NFL. I could see that going either way. I think McClain and Hartford are ready and have like good recruiting pedigrees if that matters to you. And I think Ohio State could be okay there. Again, like the only question for me is nickel, replacing Jordan Hancock. Lorenzo Styles Jr. was the backup there last year, transferred from Notre Dame a couple years ago, converted from receiver to defensive back. I think he's good against the run. I don't think he's very good in coverage. I think he has to make some serious strides in coverage for him to be the guy who plays that position all year. But I also think he had a better spring. So Bryce West is also there as a second year guy. So
is this close?
I think it's Ohio State. No, I think it's Ohio State.
Let me ask you this. Is Caleb Downs the best safety in America?
Yeah.
Is Dylan Thieneman the second best safety in America?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm not a huge Dylan Thieneman fan.
Really?
No, I think I've said before, part of me wonders if he was a good stats, bad team kind of guy.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I do think Downs stands out so much. And then there's still more there with Igbinosun. Matthews feels like a star if he's a full-time starter. Mm-hmm. I think it is Ohio State as well. Again, I think we also have to give a nod, like both these teams recruit really well in the secondary and are building something there. Mm-hmm. And so, interesting. Okay. Interesting. I do remember now that you're not as high on him. I think Ohio State's the answer, but we both agreed that we think Oregon's secondary, while completely new, could be better than last year's secondary at Oregon. But as you pointed out, that's maybe because in the big moments, they weren't quite as good as they needed to be. Mm-hmm. All right. Coaching. Ryan Day's the head coach of Ohio State, and he has new coordinators. We've done a lot with this, so we don't have to do a ton with this. People know that Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles are gone, but what's your view here?
I'm interested in like Ryan Day with the title now and what that means for him and what that might open up for him in terms of mostly the Michigan game, just like relaxing a little bit. Yep. And maybe getting the best out of his team in that particular game. Took a couple of gambles, I think, with both coordinator hires. As we mentioned when it happened, like I'm a little more sort of sanguine with the Heartline thing because if he encounters any issues, Ryan Day can help him. And Matt Patricia seemingly thus far has not been the guy that reputation wise people do not seem to like very much at the tail end of his NFL tenure. So I guess that's good for Ohio State. And I think some of the things schematically he might do with Ohio State's defense could be interesting. So I'm wait and see on both because Brian Hartline's never called plays and Matt Patricia hasn't coached in college in 30 years or 22 years. But I think Ohio State now has a guy who's pushing himself toward maybe being the best coach in college football now that he's got a national title. So that can make up for a lot if your coordinators are kind of feeling their way through things.
Is Dan Lanning in the spot Ryan Day was in last year?
Yeah, very similar spot. Yeah.
Dan Lanning is 35-6 as a head coach. He's 10-6 against ranked teams. The 6 losses in his career are he lost to Georgia in the very first game he ever coached, which was what? Good luck with that. He lost to Ohio State last year in the playoff. So he has 2 losses to teams that then won the national championship. And then his other 4 losses are rivalry losses, 3 to Washington and 1 to Oregon State. Now, he did beat Washington last year, and he did beat Oregon State last year, which is a big deal. So, and he doesn't have that, even the Oregon State loss, they were a ranked team. He doesn't have that, oh, we lost to a 6-6 team kind of thing, but Ryan Day doesn't really have that either. And Oregon is not national title or bust. We had that conversation last year in the same way that some people perceived Ohio State to be last year. But there's no dispute that Dan Lanning is an excellent head coach, program builder, recruiter, motivator. I think schematically, like he's everything that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's a get over the top conversation. And that's the conversation. It's a rivalry conversation and a get over the top conversation, which is what the Ryan Day conversation, we're trying to take out a little bit of like, you got to beat Michigan. You can't beat Michigan. Like Lanning's not at that point. It did beat Washington last year, but that's where it's similar. Yes. Like, and so like that is what it is.
Yeah. I think they're in this, very much the same spots.
Will Stein, the offensive coordinator, just to note again, his first staff, he hired Kenny Dillingham as the offensive coordinator. Kenny Dillingham was 31 years old. And then when Dillingham left after a year to go be the head coach at Arizona State and make the playoff last year, he hired Will Stein when Will Stein was 33. So I do this. Again, it's part of what Dan Lanning does. Opposite side of the ball, he's been handing his offense over to young guys he believes in. He hired Will Stein from Texas San Antonio and said, like, here, take the offense. And it's been really good. For Mo rankings, Dan Lanning's 3 years. Offense 8-1-2, defense 41-11-15. So Tosh Lapoy has been his defensive coordinator the whole time. He's kind of more of a recruiting guy, but Lanning's, I think, like the real backbone of that defense. Mm-hmm. And he's hired his first staff. 6 of the 10 guys from his first staff are gone because they've gone on to like bigger, better jobs. So I think he's pretty good at hiring. And so is getting your doors blown off by Ohio State when you were previously undefeated and you had a week off and Ohio State had to play Tennessee and you were on the West Coast and Ohio State had to come play in the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. Not just losing to a team that was on a roll and went on to win the national championship, getting destroyed. How much of a black mark is that against Dan Lanning?
I think it's a pretty big one. Like they didn't seem ready, right? Like yeah. And that is like sort of unfathomable with the amount of time they had to prepare for that game. And I think also in a position to sort of rightfully assume they'd probably be playing Ohio State, even though some people picked Tennessee to beat Ohio State.
Those people.
So yeah, pretty big. That was a huge spot for Oregon, obviously. Just like a opportunity to really vault the program into something different. Or like at least a different stratosphere under Lanning as he's trying to build there, and it was a huge missed opportunity. And it's not even losing, like to lose that way was pretty bad, I thought.
So Ryan Day showed it, and Dan Lanning needs to show it. So Ohio State gets the coaching edge.
Yeah. Even with the coordinator changes, I think Ohio State gets it.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, like Stein and Lapoy are pretty good. It isn't.
I don't think Lupoy is that good. I don't know what to make of Lupoy.
He's kind of had a he's not checkered career. He's bounced around a lot, and he's always been viewed as more of a recruiter than like a scheme it up defensive guy. They lost Junior Adams, their receivers coach, who was really good, to the NFL. They brought in Ross Ferguson from Syracuse as a replacement there. It's similar to when they lost Carlos Lachlan to Ohio State, their running backs coach. Like they have good position coaches and people come try to steal them. So I think Dan Lanning's pretty good at hiring. Okay. Will Stein, I think, is really good. We're still going Ohio State though, because Day showed it. Day did the Michigan loss was terrible last year, and Day and that staff and that team did an unbelievable job of bouncing back schematically, emotionally, physically, everything.
Yes. On
that playoff run and showed something that Dan Lanning needs to show. But I do not want to underestimate. Is the official position of KOTN that losing Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly is a huge deal? And Ohio State does have to make sure that we don't want to brush past that.
No,
you could argue they had the best coordinator combo in the country last year, and they hired kind of like a guy who'd kind of, I don't know, that a ton of people were beat down Matt Patricia's door, and a guy who's never called plays before in Brian Hartline. So we have to acknowledge that. Sure,
certainly. Yeah, I do. I just think for me, this is more of a head coaching conversation.
Okay.
And that, I think, certainly favors Ohio State.
All right. Intangibles and schedule. Ohio State plays arguably the 2 biggest games of the regular season this year.
Home against Texas, home against Penn State. Not bad. I don't know, I don't know what the intangibles are for Ohio State because Ryan Day won a national championship. I get, he has to beat Michigan. I understand that. Hasn't beat Michigan the last 4 times they played. So that's the thing that the next box, I guess, that he has to check. But even I don't even know how to process that now in a world where he has a national championship ring. It's like I don't know what another loss there would mean, if it would mean anything, frankly, other than like the emotional complications of that for Ohio State fans. But it's like Ohio State lost to Michigan, won a national title, and I don't know what to make of that anymore.
Yeah.
I was looking through like Ohio State's previous national championships and what they've done the year after that. Good. Like they were bad once. In 1943, coming off of a national championship, they won 3-6. One other year, coming off the national championship in 1961, they finished 6-3 and weren't ranked. Every other year, coming off a national championship, they finished in the top 10 and were in the top 5 a couple of those years, and some of them were one game away from playing for a national championship or being named the national championship champion again.
I would say the past 3. They've been excellent and lost the game they couldn't lose.
Yeah.
So 68 national champs and 69, they're undefeated. They go up to Michigan. They think guys get food poisoning on the train, and they lose to Bo Schembechler in year 1 of the 10-year war. 02, they're great. They lose to Wisconsin midseason, but then they lose to Michigan. And it's Jim Tressel's only loss to Michigan. It's a number 5 Michigan team, but like that.
There were also some nail biters that year, right? Like San Diego State by a field goal, NC State in overtime, Bowling Green by a field goal. It was similar to 2015, where it's just like something's amiss.
And in 15, they lose the game to Michigan State that they can't lose. Yeah. So, but guess what? In the year of our Lord 2025, if you lose a game you can't lose, it just means you're a 6 seed instead of a 3 seed.
Right. So again,
which is like, do you miss seasons being ruined? Or so this is, I don't think it's unreasonable to be on alert for Ohio State of like maybe losing the game that you don't see coming, and then they also play. Is that too much? Or Ohio State Texas and Ohio State Penn State right now, if we were ranking the biggest games of the college football regular season, it'd be those 2 games plus Georgia Texas are the 3 biggest
and
games.
Then
yes,
like Clemson LSU probably is up there too. Yeah.
God. LSU's going to suck. Why would anyone think that's a big game? Oregon, Phil Knight wants a national title, and he's not getting any younger. I think he's 87 years old. So that he is 87 years old. That's not like, oh, well, you better. But it is like, they're pushing here, and they've lost 2 national championship games: 2010 to Auburn, Ohio State in 2014. They're number 1 last year. They lose to Ohio State. Like they've been good enough to win a national title, and they don't have one yet. And the patriarch of the program, I think, could really use one. So like I don't think that means that like every Oregon season from now until they win a national title is like a win one for Phil conversation. But it is interesting. And I also don't think it means that whenever 20 years from now, if Phil Knight's not around, does it mean that Oregon's not going to be good because the founder of Nike is no longer here? And then are they not going to get money from Nike anymore? And no, but I just think it's something there. I don't even know what their schedule. I'm curious how much we'll have a time zone travel conversation in the Big Ten this year. Do you think, like, again, in the end, I thought it was going to be a big deal last year, and I think it kind of was. So does everybody now adjust and it's fine? Or do we continue to be on alert for, I don't know, that's a weird trip kind of conversations for these West Coast teams? For instance, they're not going to lose, but Oregon in week 3 is at Northwestern for big noon. It's going to be a 9 a.m. body clock time for the Oregon guys.
Yeah, in a stadium that has 5,000 people in it.
Yeah. So like
that'll be weird.
That'll
be weird. Yeah. I think it'll be less of a talking point this year.
Okay.
I think teams will have figured some stuff out logistically going through it last year.
There are 4 trips like that: at Northwestern, at Penn State, which we've talked about a lot. We just think that's a big ask for Oregon there. At Rutgers, at Iowa. They also play at Washington, but that's not that situation. Again, as we said, they host Oklahoma State in their big non-conference game. It's Montana State, Oklahoma State, Oregon State for the non-conference. They also get Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and USC at home. So, I mean, I think you can just stare at it. We're assuming they're going to lose at Penn State, but I think you can see your way to 11-1. But I also am not. I don't think it's a guarantee of 11-1.
I don't think it's a guarantee of 11-1. I think like of these two teams, I view Oregon as the one who might be a little more susceptible to getting got by a team you don't see coming. And maybe part of that is like some of the travel stuff. Like Ohio State, in addition to playing Texas and Penn State, plays at Washington, at Illinois, and at Wisconsin. I don't know what to make of Wisconsin, but I think like at Washington early and at Illinois more toward the middle of the season are spots where Ohio State like has to keep its head on a swivel. Like I don't those aren't gimmies. And obviously they got to go play at Michigan at the end of the year. So I think Oregon's schedule is easier than Ohio State's, but
because they don't play Texas.
And they don't play Michigan.
Right.
They play Illinois. Does Oregon play Illinois?
No.
Yeah, they don't play Illinois either. So I think Ohio State definitely has a harder schedule, but I think Ohio State's more built to navigate that schedule than Oregon would be if the roles were reversed. And it's not like Ohio State playing Texas is a monster game. Like I'm fired up for it and everyone should be. Ohio State like plays that game. They played a lot of big time non-conference showdowns in the last 2 decades. Have actually not been so good at home in those games. They've been better on the road, I think, in some of those games, but have played them nonetheless. And Ryan Day's coached in a couple of them against Notre Dame. So,
so where do we go here? Who wins?
I think Oregon's like if it's just a question of like whose schedule's easier, it's Oregon. Like whose schedule would you rather face? I think the answer is Oregon.
So I think again, potential and opportunity should not be a burden. But if you're looking for the bustiest team in college football, now to your bust. If you believe in that phrasing, who did it apply to last year? Ohio State, 100 out of 100. They were by far the leading candidate for that. This year, if you are choosing to apply that phrase to anybody, we think it's Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
How much is it Oregon? Or actually, when we're talking about some of the young guys they have, like they have young guys at receiver who aren't going anywhere. They got young guys ready in the secondary.
The
quarterback's young. I don't think it's, other than the fact that they were the only undefeated team in the regular season last year and #1 and they got their doors blown off in the playoff, like that stings. But I don't think the roster tells you like, they better do it this year because I think they're going to do it. Is Dan Lanning going to win a national title at Oregon? Yes. Yes.
I think you will.
Unless he's the head coach at Alabama because Kalen DeWar gets fired after this year.
Yes.
Oregon in this era will win a national title because if for some reason he leaves, they'll get somebody good. So I don't think it's very busty. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. Not in the same way that Penn State is. Not in the same way that Ohio State was last year.
Okay. So then do we lean intangibles for Oregon just because their schedule's a little easier? Because they don't have to play Texas? They don't have to play Michigan?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. I just like, give me the team with the easier schedule. Yeah.
All right. Quarterback, Ohio State. Skill positions, Ohio State. Offensive line, Oregon. Defensive front seven, Oregon. Secondary, Ohio State. Coaching, Ohio State. Intangibles, Oregon. It's 4-3 Ohio State. I have said things on this show during the offseason where I was curious about Oregon, maybe expecting a little bit of a step back. I feel better about Oregon after the research than I did going in.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion of Oregon after this discussion, and how did your research on Ohio State affect you?
I probably feel about the same on Oregon. Like, just for relying on youth in a couple of key spots that I think could be tricky, but also could be like quite rewarding by the end of the year. And I don't really know what to make of that. I actually feel part of it is too the conversation we had a couple shows ago about like repeating as national champions, right? And I'm not, as we sit here today, like Ohio State is not my national champion pick, but like I'm considering them because this roster, for as much as they lost, like I think is actually in much better shape than people realize.
Okay.
So like I came away feeling like even, I guess, like slightly more confident in Ohio State's ability to sort of like be right back in that mix this year. And like the fact that I think the roster turned over enough for them to not be in a situation that Ohio State was in 2015, where it was like, you got to repeat, you're too good, you got to repeat.
Yes. Agreed.
But then they are also unburdened by the expectation of winning a national championship in a way that I actually think might serve them well.
Yes. And there's a lot of hungry guys who've been waiting for a chance to play. I think there are more potential gaps in the Ohio State roster than we're used to, which is just a conversation about usually you go 1 through 22 at Ohio State and you're like, yeah, NFL guy, 5-star recruit, NFL guy, 2nd round pick. And you know what I mean? And so there's a lot riding on the transfer tackles being good, right? There's a lot riding on the transfer tackles being good, right? Mm-hmm. And there's I think a lot riding on the Peoples-Donaldson combination at running back. But in the end, who would you rather be in 2025?
I would rather be Ohio State.
I would rather be Ohio State, but it's a closer gap than I would have said before we started the research for the show. But also, I am influenced by the repeat show that we did about Ohio State, which led me to like, oh, this is actually more possible that like repeating's not impossible. So, and I do think there's some emotional stuff that's like in a good spot for Ohio State. But Oregon just might run through some people. And if Oregon goes to Penn State and wins, then all bets are off.
Sure.
Then my view of Oregon has officially changed because we've been assuming a loss at Penn State since January for Oregon. And it's hard to go undefeated in the regular season in back-to-back years. Right. So it's like, oh, and so you have a road trip on the other side of the country against a team that people are going to pick to win the national championship. Yeah, we're going to assume you're going to lose that game. Right. So if and when they lose that, that's not going to change my opinion of Oregon. I'm going to still think Oregon's a good team that's going to make the playoff. But if they win that, holy moly, now we start like the Dante Moore Heisman train. Holy moly, we're talking about Corian Moore in the same vein of Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, right? Oh my gosh, the secondary really is that much better. These tackles are awesome. So I'm not expecting that, but I'll be very curious if it happens. Okay, we're picking Ohio State
for that game. Yeah. Yes.
Let me ask you a question. What do we do for the rest of the show? We have Whatcha that we want to do, have to do, will do, and we have a pretty in-depth conversation about new rivalries in college football that I don't think we can do in 7 minutes, and I don't know if we want to do a 3-hour show. Producer Mike, jump in here with us. Should we hold the new rivalries in college football conversation for another day?
I think so. I think if we hold it till Monday,
we're doing.
We have a giant.
It would fit. It would fit.
Yeah, right. Because we talked about rivalry. We're talking about rivalries next week as well.
Yeah,
new and old together in one show.
Yeah.
All right.
And we won't do an Iowa State showdown for an hour and a half.
Yeah, we're going to have to put a limit on it.
We knew this was okay. We're going to hold the new college football rivalries list. For the people who have hung with us this long, we will tell you number one on our list. We have a lot of research on this. Schedule, what makes a rivalry, all this, 1 through 10. Rivalries we think we would like to become or could become new rivalries in the modern era. Number one is Ohio State, Oregon, Bill. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. I think, and one of the things that you talked about that you think makes an interesting rivalry in the modern day is if you are often competing on the recruiting trail, and then those recruitments lead into some kind of feeling on the field, which is very interesting. And when we talk about Naeem Offord and Trey McNutt and some of these conversations, like they really have been going head to head in recruiting in a lot of ways, right? They
have been. And that almost more than like the on-field stuff seems to get the fan bases fired up and going at each other a little more too. So like that's an element to it. Like obviously you see a lot of Ohio State and Michigan fans interacting with each other, but then it's like Ohio State and Oregon fans going back and forth about recruiting and what happened on the field last year. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will get to that. We have that ready for you. We have the research. We have the beautiful graphic that Mike made. We just
want to flash the graphic for 2 seconds?
If you want to, we're not going to say it. If you are a podcast listener, we apologize, but this would drive you to the YouTube show. We're going to flash the graphic for 2 seconds. And if you want to screenshot it, and ready?
3, 2, 1, bam. 1, 2, 3. It's off.
Wow.
You do not want to know how much research I did about Arkansas versus Oklahoma for a Northern show, but I did. It's a beautiful graphic. My God, I hope that. So that we'll get to it next week. Bill Landis, we're officially getting to that point in the year. It's too much ball.
Great. It's the best time of the year.
All right.
Actually, the season's the best time of the year. But,
yeah, we'll start doing that. We'll just have Mike make beautiful graphics for next week's show and then flash them for 2 seconds. People are like, I can't wait for the Miami Cal conversation. I have to watch next week. Yeah, you do.
Turkey Bass says he got it, so he must have got a screenshot. So,
if you guys put this out there, though, I don't want to see this on social media.
It's embargoed.
I don't want On3 doing a social media post about our top 10 new rivalries ranking. All right.
Yeah.
Landis, we're going to talk about movies and food.
Let's do it.
All right. And we're not going to apologize for going long. It's the two awesome programs in the North. And we hope you guys enjoyed that. When we come back, what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking on Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. Too much ball is not a bad t-shirt slogan either. Too much ball. KOTN. TMB on KOTN. What are you watching?
I watched. There's a new Netflix documentary about the Titan submarine that imploded when I went down to see the Titanic. What was that, 2 years ago? It was good.
Why would you watch that?
Why would I watch it? Because it's fast. At every turn, people told this guy, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. By the way, when you're in the submarine diving to Titanic, you can hear it breaking in real time. This is a bad idea. And he ignored everybody, and then he died.
No. But it's still... Yeah. And also, you're not planning to go in a submarine to the bottom of the ocean, so you're okay.
Never, ever in my life will I get into a submarine. No, but I've always been a little bit infatuated with Titanic, like a lot of people. And just like I don't even know what the right word is to describe Stockton Rush, who was the CEO of OceanGate. But it was also just like a really well done documentary. Like they talked to basically everybody that you kind of would hope they would talk to involved with it. Like they talked to the main whistleblower, the investigative reporter from Wired magazine, who kind of wrote the defining story about all of it that turned into the documentary, the U.S. Coast Guard dude who led the investigation into what happened. They talked to him, a bunch of former employees of OceanGate, people who had successfully gone down on the sub and survived doing it. A guy who was supposed to go down on the trip before it imploded and almost certainly would have lost his life had that trip actually gone through. And just the looks on those people's faces to see in their eyes their understanding of how lucky they were to have not died on their trip down there. It's heavy, but it's a pretty captivating story, and I thought was a really well done documentary.
What's it on? Netflix, you said?
Netflix, yeah.
And what's it called? Is it called Your Subsplodin'? What's it called?
It's just called Titan.
Okay.
Was the name of the sub, yeah.
Okay. So my description of this is now much like the series itself. This will be my last one. But my wife and I did go see the last Mission Impossible movie that we had been doing homework on for weeks to watch the first 7 so we could go watch the 8th. And I then listened to my favorite movie podcast. What I had saved it. I didn't want to listen to it, obviously, before I saw the movie. Then I went back and listened to them talk about the movie. And it seemed like a lot of people who loved Mission Impossible, and if you are a person who loved the Mission Impossible movies, maybe you thought that the beginning of the movie in the theaters now was kind of slow because there was a lot of recap. And there were a lot of montages from the first 7 movies. And there were a lot of references to the earlier movies. But I can say what my wife and I then did made it incredibly rewarding because it was like the first hour of the movie was rewarding us for watching the first 7 in succession right before this movie. Because we're doing the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the screen thing the whole time. It's like, right. Oh, I just watched that. Oh, I just watched that. I just watched that. And if you're a diehard Mission Impossible person who's been watching them all for 25 years, you're kind of like, oh, God, I know all this stuff. But we had just absorbed it and we were having it shown back to us. And it connected us to the movie and grounded us in the movie in a very real way. And then we very, very much liked it. And I think
I'm glad.
If we had not watched the first 7, we would have been confused, but doing it like we did, I was like making fun of ourselves for doing it. It was the exact right thing to do. So whether you've watched the Mission Impossible movies along the way or not, I now am officially recommending a 2-week hardcore all 7 movies rewatch and then see the 8th. And I think it makes the 8th better.
All right. Are all 7 available for streaming?
We watched them all on Amazon Prime. Most of them were free with like our subscription. A couple of them we had to pay $3 for.
Okay.
But they were all available and they're like labeled. They had like the number on them.
Nice.
MI1, MI2, MI7, right? So we couldn't get confused. So anyway, we did it. And I think it's
an accomplishment. Yeah.
And I've never seen, like, I don't know that I've ever seen a franchise movie sort of recap itself in quite the same way, that they're just like, and I heard like the movie podcast I was listening to, they said it was like a clip show on TV. Like when Friends used to be like, this show is just a clips of other previous shows.
Mm-hmm.
And it was. And it's just a matter of, did you like that or not? But the way that we consumed it, we liked it. We felt rewarded and connected. So anyway, I recommend it. All right.
You should do it. You should do it now with like Fast and the Furious. See if you like that.
Oh my
That's
God.
A lot of movies are good. Yeah.
No, that I bang my head. Do you watch those?
I've seen the first one. I've seen the first one. Yeah.
Those aren't for me. Those aren't for me.
Yeah.
I mean, those are people. I'm just like, if those people were on the street, I'd be yelling at them for driving too fast in my neighborhood. I can't watch people drive too fast on the road. That is not what I'm here to do. All right. What are you eating?
I had the best General Tso's chicken of my life over the weekend. Yeah, it was out in Pittsburgh for the U.S. Open, and there's a place in a town called like Fox Chapel, which is like a Pittsburgh, I don't know, adjoining community or whatever. It was good. It was like if you had like Chinese like barbecue spare ribs, and like sometimes you get them and it's almost like a glaze more than a sauce on them. That's how this General Tso's chicken was, and it had the perfect amount of heat. And I could tell. I hate when I order General Tso's and like you get a container and it looks like it's full of chicken, but then like it's like 60% chicken and a lot of it's just like fried bits of nothing or a cut of meat that's like a borderline inedible, like it's like a ligament that you can't really chew through. This was just like a heap and pile of robust white meat chicken covered in the most flavorful General Tso's sauce I've ever had.
The ligament ratio is so important.
Yeah.
Right. And there's just some places where you get more of that. It's like, is this a patella tendon? I think this is a patella tendon. But that robust, and that's such a great word, robust white meat, when the sauce hits the right way.
That's what they called me in high school. Yeah. Robust white meat.
French vanilla and robust white meat. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It
was really rewarding because we had it after we were walking the golf course all day. I was starving. But I had also been like craving good Chinese food for a while, and like it just all combined for a really nice experience.
When you go to a Chinese food restaurant you've never been to before and you have a great meal, you just like want to run a lap in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It is like, it's a victory. It's so, because you don't know. And it's a great, right? I mean, you got to try. So it makes me feel good inside.
It was also good leftover too. I didn't eat all of it in the first go around.
Nice.
And I think it's rare to find Chinese food that holds up the next day. And this did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. That inspires me to go get some good Chinese food. So this is something that I'm not eating yet. And my daughter was visiting friends in Hawaii a couple months ago and got us a bag of coffee from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. But she got us like full beans. It's not ground, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't have a coffee grinder, and I'm too scared to go ask someone to grind my coffee. Because I guess you can go to like a coffee shop and maybe they'll do it, or like a
Some grocery stores have them.
Restaurant or grocery stores. I don't know what to do. I've never done it. It makes me wonder how many people have their own coffee grinders. This is like the most nervous I've ever been to ask anyone to do anything ever. And so I'm so excited to drink my Hawaiian coffee, but I don't understand how people do this and how many people have their own coffee grinders. And if you don't, what do you do? Would you come with me and hold my hand and walk me into a grocery store and say, this 51-year-old man would like you to grind his coffee? I don't know why it is.
We might have a coffee grinder you can borrow.
It feels like such an imposition to me. And then if I have to grind my own, am I going to do it right? This has been stressing me out for months, and it just sits in our pantry, and I stare at it, and I'm so excited to drink it. But it is such a burden to get that coffee grinded. It's driving me insane.
I can just do it. Just go out into the world. It'll be fine. People are nice, especially coffee people. They're nice.
But it's
they
like
might make you buy a bag from whatever they're selling, and then
they
say, "Hey, by the way, can you grind this for me?"
That's what you do. Okay, that would make sense. Because it's like, I didn't buy this from you, but here, do this for me. Here's $1.
You don't have a neighbor you could ask? Like, do you guys have a coffee grinder?
I don't know. Who has them? Is it normal? Is it normal to have a coffee grinder? I think only rich people do. I don't have a coffee grinder. I'm not a millionaire.
It's like people who like homebrew, like homebrew their own beers and stuff. Like people have become very into coffee, like, and they have like elaborate setups in their house. Yeah.
Oh my God, I have a knot in my stomach right now just thinking about it. Like going door to door.
Buy a pretty cheap coffee grinder on Amazon.
That would probably be the best solution. It's better than this. I can't live this way. And it's like my daughter, it's such a wonderful gesture, and I'm sure it's going to be great when we get it. She didn't intend to buy the whole beans, but having whole bean coffee in my house is ruining my life. So anyway.
It is tough.
That's a normal thing for a person to say. What are you thinking about?
So I did go to the U.S. Open. You mentioned that on Monday. I just mentioned it again a minute ago. One quick thing from that, I was actually surprised by like how little golf you see when you go to a golf event. And I don't know, part of that is undoubtedly me like not knowing exactly like what to do when we were there. So we were like bopping around the different holes, and like Oakmont Country Club in Pittsburgh felt pretty condensed, and it was like you walk to one place and then you're sort of in a dead end, and then when you turn around to go to some other place, you're just part of a sea of people, and it takes forever to get there. So I feel like I didn't see a lot of golf shots. I saw most of the players I wanted to see hit the ball a few times, but for what the tickets cost, I wish I maybe would have seen a little more golf, but that's probably mostly on me.
Interesting.
But the biggest thing was this, and I'm like you, I'm a man from Pennsylvania. I've driven the Pennsylvania Turnpike too many times to count in my life, and I hate it with every fiber of my being, but it's a necessary evil when you're driving through the state of Pennsylvania. But Oakmont Country Club is split by the Pennsylvania Turnpike. So like one half of so when you're going from one part of the course to the other, you have to walk on a footbridge over the turnpike, which was awesome. Just like seeing the turnpike from a totally different vantage point was like actually like kind of cool for someone who's driven on the turnpike a billion times in their life. But the other thing was too, you had to go park in a place that was like 10 miles from the country club. And it was actually a nice setup. They bust you in on like luxury coaches. It was like all well done and well organized. But the quickest way to get to from where the parking lots were to the country club was to access the turnpike via those like fancy gates on the side that only state troopers are allowed to drive through usually. Yeah. But you got like princess access to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, which was just like a real thrill for me. Because I've spent God knows how much money in my life driving on the turnpike to get like special access to the turnpike on a luxury bus going to Oakmont Country Club. Just felt like the height of luxury.
Wow. Look at you.
Yeah.
That is odd to me. I wonder what the story is of splitting that golf course in half with the turnpike. Although we know like there's a terrible history of like splitting neighborhoods in half with roads and that kind of thing. But yeah, you can split a golf course.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Oakmont Country Club, but only like a small part of it is actually in Oakmont because the other part of it's on the other side of the turnpike.
Weird.
In a different township.
How do the players get there? The players have to go over the turnpike?
So there are three bridges, like in kind of quick succession. So one was like for players only. One was for patrons, which was a real problem. And the other one was like for carts. But the way it's set up, it's like they play the first hole, you go downhill, and then the second hole is on the other side of the turnpike. So like Scotty Scheffler plays one, and the gigantic gallery that's with him all has to like get through this very narrow turnpike bridge to go watch him tee off on two.
Oh,
If you
wow.
want to follow him, and like it created a serious bottleneck that we didn't partake of. But like I was just like standing on the top of the hill looking at it. I was like, there are 10,000 people trying to cross this bridge at one time, and
Like
they're going
single
nowhere.
file.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're going nowhere because there's people coming the other way too. Like
Right.
there's only one spot for people to cross. It's like
That's so weird.
I don't know. The course is 100 and whatever years old. Like it wasn't built to hold 40,000 people watching golf. But what are you gonna do?
You need to ride your horse to the golf course. You have to worry about the turnpike. Okay. Right. So I'm wondering if I should drink more. So do you think I should drink more alcohol? Am I missing out? Because
that's funny you mentioned that because I'm thinking I should drink less.
Like there's just so much of the world. Like we went to, for our Father's Day lunch, we went to like a lovely sat on a patio, and I had a pulled pork sandwich, but it's like a brewery, you know, like it's like kind of a brewery first. It's like that. There's just a whole side of the menu that I'm missing out on in life because I just kind of choose not to drink, and I don't really like it, and it's just not something I do. So I'm wondering, and I've been thinking about this, that the word's already wrong. Like people, you have interventions for people, usually when you want someone to stop a behavior, right? So what is a thing, especially as people get older? Is it an outervention, a thing where you can grab someone and say, you're not doing a thing that you should do? And I guess it would be very odd for my friends and family to get together and say, Doug, you need to drink more. But I'm wondering if I'm missing out. Am I missing out? Both on like delicious things to drink and the experience of maybe just having like a little light buzz on a Sunday afternoon, and it makes me see the world in a different way. Or am I good? Am I good?
I don't know. A daytime buzz on a Sunday is pretty nice.
Okay.
I'm realizing more and more that like I just like I can't drink to the point of like being drunk because I just get like full and sleepy.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like having 2 or 3 at dinner, not bad. Somebody else drives you home. It's not a bad place to be.
Be relaxed. Do you?
I don't know that you would like suddenly develop like a taste for beer if you're this far along and you don't like it or haven't had it. But like there's probably like some pretty nice cocktails you're missing out on, or a nice wine perhaps that maybe you'd like.
Yeah, I always feel like a cocktail. I mean, I'll have a cocktail twice a year, but like to get one kind of for no reason, just like it just feels aggressive to me. But like to have a beer or a glass of wine, but I don't like either of those things. I looked it up. Do you want to guess by these groups that do surveys, percentage of U.S. adults who drink? The question is, do you have occasion to use alcoholic beverages such as liquor, wine, or beer, or are you a total abstainer? What percent, yes, I drink, the last time they asked this, that Gallup asked this in 2022?
85%.
63, which I was surprised it was that. They've been asking it since 1939. The high was 71% in 1978. It's been as low as 55% in 1958, but like the range is around 60. So that actually made me feel better because sometimes I feel like 90% of the world drinks and I'm missing out. But if it's only 63%, maybe I'm okay. And I'm not trying to be flippant about it. I don't want to be flippant about it. I understand there are people who have very serious issues with alcohol who have made very difficult and smart and brave decisions to not consume it anymore. But I also understand there are people who just can enjoy it in a very pleasurable way. And that's what I'm wondering about. So, but you think I'm all right?
I think you're okay. Yeah. Try an edible if you want that Sunday buzz.
Are we there? How close are we to the Saturday afternoon Father's Day meal that it's like, what do you want for dessert? It's like, I'll take an edible. Like, is that where the word, I actually don't even know. Like, are we getting there?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are like, we've had dinner. It's time to wind down. I'm going to pop an edible and have a glass of wine and fall asleep.
But like do you think we will get there in the next 5 to 10 years where that occurs at the restaurant?
Oh, no, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll do that on the show. Yeah, we'll do an edible show sometime when we're not 214 in. Okay. I actually think we have. I'm trying to think about it. I'm not 100% that we'll do the 10 new rivalries we want to see on the Monday show, but I can see how it could fit into the Wednesday show next week. Too much ball. TMB, KOTN. We appreciate producer Mike for building the beautiful graphic, always making us look good and sound good here. Thanks to you guys for being here. I don't know that anybody's surprised that an Ohio State Oregon discussion is going to get pretty long and pretty hot, right? Because like they're very, very, very important football teams to the north who are at the top of the sport, and do have a very interesting intertwined history that we'll get into more later. For now, we appreciate everybody who is hanging out with us live in the YouTube chat. If you're watching back on YouTube, if you're listening back on a podcast, absolutely could not be more grateful that you are here and part of the Northern Ball experience. We'll see you on Monday. We have big state of Iowa discussions on the horizon. Strap in. Prepare yourself. We'll get to them. We have more showdowns to do. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was Kings of the North.